Starting today, we're moving in with my parents. It's not a big deal because they're my own parents, right? But my husband surprised me with this idea out of nowhere. I was so shocked and close to tears, I couldn't believe what he was saying. Just a few days after my father's funeral, my husband decided we should move out of our home. It was a shock because my emotions were still raw from saying goodbye to Dad. He didn't seem to understand my grief and chose our new place without asking how I felt. Surprisingly, it was a villa my father had left me. When we got there, my in-laws had already moved in. I'm Victoria, 29 years old, a product designer with my own successful business. Matthew and I have been married for 5 years. My career is going great, and I'm financially stable enough to own our apartment. Throughout our relationship, my husband felt insecure because I earned more than him. Instead of being happy for me, he saw it as a competition, acting immaturely and choosing rivalry over support. I had hoped for his understanding during this tough time, but instead, our new home felt like a battleground of emotions. My father used to tell me not to worry about him and to focus on my marriage, but I believed it was important to spend time with him while we could. As time went on, I found it hard to hide my frustration with my husband. In the beginning, our love was strong, and we were happy together. But his insensitive remarks about my father's illness changed everything. It was difficult to accept this new side of him. My husband and I both worked from home, but he thought having me around was distracting, so I rented an office space and started commuting. It was convenient because it was on my way to the hospital where my father was being treated. Meanwhile, my husband stayed home all day and left all the chores to me. Juggling work, taking care of my father, and managing the house wore me out. Every day, I came home to find a mess and dirty dishes left by my husband. He seemed oblivious to my exhaustion and lived selfishly. Living with him made me realize he lacked empathy, leaving me feeling terribly alone. Then my father passed away. We had sold our family home as we had discussed with him. Despite being busy with funeral arrangements, my husband seemed distant, often on his phone or disappearing altogether. "Matthew, please help me, especially now," I begged, but he just got another work call. After hanging up, he laughed about all the calls he was getting. My anger and disappointment towards him grew deeper, especially with the sudden loss of my father. He became even colder, and I felt overwhelmingly sad. On the day of the funeral, he spent a long time talking to his parents away from everyone else. When they returned, they were smirking, which made me feel more isolated as others noticed their behavior. Despite everything, the cremation, burial, and inheritance processes went smoothly and the funeral ended well. After my father's death, my husband casually suggested, "Let's move in with my parents starting today. They're my parents, so it should be fine, right? If you don't agree, maybe we should think about divorce," he said with a laugh. But I couldn't stay calm after such an unreasonable proposal, especially while grieving. "How can we live there? We don't have any extra rooms in this apartment, do we?" I questioned. Actually, one room in our apartment served as an office and storage for my husband's work stuff. Since we didn't have kids, he used it freely. "We have that villa you inherited," he replied, smiling. I was shocked. Even though we had sold our family home, the villa held special memories for both my father and me. It was a place I wanted to keep as a tribute to him. But my husband didn't seem to care about my feelings and kept pushing for his own way. Living in that villa would be really tough for me. I tried to explain, but he didn't seem to listen. His parents had already ended their lease and decided to move into the villa. It seemed they had planned this during my father's funeral. Attracted by its space and peaceful location, their move was already in progress, and I felt like any objections I had would be pointless. Every time I tried to talk about my feelings, my husband would get annoyed. "You're always thinking about yourself. You've been away from home so much because of your father's illness and those sudden emergencies. Do you realize how much I've had to put up with because of your obsession with your father?" His words were harsh and unsympathetic, making my world even darker. "Now that your father has passed, you should listen to me," he went on. "It took him a whole year to die, which was way too long." His cold, heartless comments left me reeling. I didn't want to believe that this was who my husband truly was, but it was becoming painfully clear. He had little regard for my father or me. I remembered the pain on my father's face as he lay in the hospital bed. He would never have wanted me to abandon his memory just to obey my husband's insensitive demands. My husband's lack of empathy was crushing, and I felt more and more alone in my grief. and in my battle to honor my father's legacy. In that moment, any love I had for my husband vanished. My heart ached as I considered his apparent excitement about gaining the villa while I was supposed to be grieving for my father. Despite the storm of emotions inside me, I kept my composure and cautioned him, "You may think living in the villa is a good idea now, but you might regret it later." He seemed determined, so reluctantly, I agreed to his plan. Taking only a few essentials, I left our home. My husband looked puzzled by my sparse belongings, but I simply told him, "I'll get the rest later." Honestly, I had no desire to say another word to him. It hurt to face my in-laws, who seemed to have eagerly awaited my father's death and were now moving into the villa with enthusiasm. I followed my husband in silence. The one thing I couldn't bear was the thought of my beloved place being subject to his whims. The villa, a single-family home near the sea, sat in an average neighborhood but was still conveniently close to the city center. Its land held great value. Stepping out of the station, memories of my childhood flooded back. My mother was alive then, and I remembered my father carrying me home on his back after I fell asleep on the train. Arriving at the villa, I found my in-laws already inside. Suspicion crept in. It seemed my husband had secretly given them a key without telling me. This realization made me even more uneasy. The fact that my in-laws had planned their move without consulting anyone only added to my distrust. As I looked around, as I watched my in-laws, I could see the excitement in their eyes as they imagined their new life in our family home, the villa. It was filled with sturdy furniture carefully chosen by my father, with eclectic European-style furnishings likely picked out by my mother, each piece holding sentimental value. Yet, they seemed oblivious to the true beauty of the villa. "Isn't it perfect? Goodbye cramped apartment living. We're blessed to call this place home now," they exclaimed. The view from the second floor was truly breathtaking. It reminded me of my father's quiet pride in this special place, a stark contrast to my in-laws' insensitive excitement. Amid their excitement over what they dubbed the marvelous House of Secrets, my husband and his parents' enthusiastic comments only grated on my nerves. It seemed they were completely ignoring the emotional weight of my father's passing, treating the villa as nothing more than a fortunate inheritance. The location and the house are both flawless. "We're lucky your father left us this magnificent villa. We owe him our thanks," my husband remarked thoughtlessly, sharing laughs with his parents as they cracked open beers to celebrate their new living situation. As I prepared snacks for them, cherished memories of moments spent with my parents around the dining table felt overshadowed and tainted by the current atmosphere. I chose to bury my emotions and soldier through the night. The next morning, the mood was abruptly shattered by my mother-in-law's piercing scream echoing through the villa. As I hurried to see what had happened, I found her on the bathroom floor, gripping her foot with a panicked expression. "The floor just gave way under me," she gasped, still shaken from the shock. My husband and father-in-law looked puzzled. "The floor seems fine. You probably just slipped," they suggested casually, brushing off her concerns. They examined the area she pointed to, but the floorboards appeared smooth and perfectly aligned. However, she insisted, "I'm certain the floor collapsed." As they continued their cursory inspection, I intervened. "Have you tried stepping on that slightly different colored part of the floor?" I asked, surprised. They all focused on the spot I indicated. Stepping forward, I pressed down on the discolored section with my slippered foot, and immediately the floorboard made a distinct sound and slightly sank. But the moment I lifted my foot, it snapped back into place. "What was that?" they exclaimed simultaneously. If someone stepped on it without knowing, they'd think the floor had collapsed. "Look, the floor sinks a bit." "It's like a trap," I clarified. "That's dangerous. Is there something wrong with this house?" They reacted, suddenly concerned. Their previous disregard for the sentimental value of the villa to me seemed momentarily forgotten as they faced the unexpected reality of its physical quirks. I calmly explained the situation, and they all looked at me with surprise and skepticism. "It's not a flaw," I assured them. "My father deliberately installed these features. This house is what you might call a mechanical mansion or a trick house." "Why would he do that?" they asked, perplexed. "Well, my father was a huge fan of ninjas. He invested a lot of time and money in this villa, which was not only his pride and joy, but also a showcase of his creativity," I explained. "As a child, I often came here while he worked on the house's mechanisms or added new ones. That's why the villa is full of traps and clever contraptions, like a shelf you shouldn't touch, a floorboard that drops when stepped on, a door that only opens in a specific sequence, hidden doors, and even secret rooms. This house is a reflection of my father's dreams and his inventive spirit developed over many years. Of course, this place is familiar to me, having visited since childhood and learned from my father how to navigate all these traps. I have no trouble with them. But it's a different story for my husband and in-laws who are unfamiliar with it. I warned you that living in this villa would be challenging. I also mentioned it's a place filled with my father's memories. My father's fascination with ninja gadgets was widely known among our relatives. What surprised me was that my husband and his parents had been oblivious to it. At first, my husband claimed he hadn't heard about it, but now he was speechless. My in-laws were equally taken aback by this revelation. With our apartment lease already canceled and nowhere else to go, they looked to my husband for guidance. Amid their confusion, both my father-in-law and husband accidentally triggered another trap, causing them to tumble. Seeing them sprawled on the ground, I couldn't help but chuckle. "Feel free to stay as long as you like," I said, my tone more sarcastic than sincere. They had been enchanted by the villa's luxury, ignoring my warnings and showing no interest in my father's hobbies. Now their oversight was catching up with them. Even my explanations about the trap dangers seemed to go unheard. "This won't be a problem. We'll adjust," my husband replied, trying to sound confident. I smiled knowingly, understanding his attempt but also aware of the challenges they would face in a house filled with my father's intricate contraptions. I informed them that I would return to the apartment to prepare for our move. However, my real intention was to stay behind. I needed some time alone to go through my father's belongings, finding comfort in the quiet. It gave me the space to gradually regain a sense of optimism and start envisioning my future. In just 2 days, my husband and in-laws had had enough of life in the villa. Meanwhile, my father's villa had become a minor attraction in the neighborhood. It was regularly featured in local newsletters as the trick mansion nestled in the residential area. Whenever the villa was occupied, curious locals and visitors, drawn by its reputation, would come to see the famous house. I remembered times when strangers toured the villa and local children played around it, bringing energy and liveliness to the place. My father had listed both the villa's and our former home's phone numbers in the newsletters. But now that the family home's number was inactive, any inquiries would be redirected to the villa's number. Thanks to my upbringing, I was fluent in foreign languages, which made it easy for me to handle calls from international visitors. However, my husband and in-laws struggled with this. They couldn't understand foreign languages and were already overwhelmed by the challenging lifestyle of navigating the house's many traps. Exhausted, sleep-deprived, and overwhelmed by the constant stream of unexpected visitors and challenging phone calls, they stumbled back to the apartment. "Why don't we all just live in this apartment together? Consider it," they suggested, desperate to escape the villa. They had eagerly anticipated inheriting the villa after my father's passing. But ironically, they couldn't handle living there for even 2 days. Instead of offering them tea, I handed my husband the divorce papers already filled out and stamped. "There's no way we can live together. If you understand, please leave quickly," I explained with a heavy sigh. I couldn't forgive him for his insensitivity and the way he had dismissed my feelings without discussion or explanation. He had unilaterally decided we would live with his parents. He had never shared household responsibilities with me before and had comfortably left them all to me. During our time at the villa, I felt trapped and overwhelmed, yet he seemed completely indifferent to my struggles. Facing my husband and his parents in our apartment, I realized I couldn't continue living with someone so self-centered. His actions had spoken louder than any promises he could make. "What's going on? You used to love me, right?" he asked, puzzled by my cold demeanor. I couldn't help but scoff at his naive question. How can I love someone who secretly wished for my father's death and celebrated when he passed? I replied, my voice steady and unwavering. I handed him the divorce papers and firmly instructed all 3 of them to leave the apartment. "First of all, this is my apartment. If anyone should leave, it's you," I asserted. When my husband raised his voice, disregarding the disturbance it caused our neighbors, I reminded him calmly, "Victoria, I'll call the police for trespassing if you don't leave quietly. Remember, this apartment is in my name." They fell silent, realizing the seriousness of the situation. They had relied on me for financial support, and now, with little of their own, they faced a harsh reality. Determined to cut ties before they could start their lengthy persuasions, I watched them leave. Neither my husband nor my in-laws had much in savings. After being kicked out of the apartment and unable to return to the villa, They ended up in a cheap, low-quality apartment, struggling to get by. The old apartment was so much better, they often complained. Initially, my husband felt guilty and apologized repeatedly. However, as time passed, his guilt turned into resentment towards his parents. Because of their age, they didn't work much, and their attempts were short-lived. Eventually, they used up all their savings and pension. The constant arguments drove a wedge between them as a family. The thin walls of their new apartment barely contained their daily disagreements. Even when they received noise complaints, they refused to apologize. Instead, they responded with hostility, making themselves unpopular with the neighbors. It seemed inevitable, but they would have to find another place to live soon. My husband, who had once enjoyed the convenience of working from home, now found himself in a cramped space with no proper workspace. This severely impacted his ability to focus, and as a result, his reputation and sales suffered. He struggled to make ends meet with a late-night job at a convenience store and was considering taking on multiple part-time jobs just to get by. In moments of clarity, my in-laws realized that letting their son make decisions for them had been their biggest mistake. During their frequent arguments, they blamed the villa's traps and each other. "If you had been more responsible, we wouldn't be in this mess," they would argue, pointing fingers but never acknowledging their own roles in their downfall. After the divorce, my career as a product designer took a significant leap forward. To cope with the grief of my father's passing and the chaos that ensued, I poured my creativity into designing with a unique twist, incorporating ninja-inspired elements inspired by my father's interests. I shared these designs on social media, where they quickly gained popularity. To my surprise, a major cosmetics company reached out, intrigued by my designs. They wanted me to create packaging with an Asian flair, incorporating ninja themes. Embracing the project, I saw it as a way to honor my father's memory. It turned out to be a huge success, propelling my career to new heights. I found solace in sharing updates at my parents' graves, telling them about my achievements and how their legacy continued to inspire my work. I decided to keep the villa, transforming it into a unique mechanical house filled with memories of my father. I organized tours and made slight adjustments to ensure it was safe for visitors, allowing locals and tourists to explore and enjoy it for free. Before long, the house garnered significant media attention. The income from this exposure was invaluable, helping to cover its maintenance costs. Moreover, articles about the house were translated into different languages, garnering support from international fans, including elderly enthusiasts who shared my father's passion for ninjas. I devoted myself to maintaining this enchanting place. The mechanical house buzzed with activity, especially popular among local children. "Is this the famous mechanical house? Where are the tricks? Show us," they'd eagerly inquire. With the help of local volunteers, we ensured everyone could play safely. Foreign tourists, in particular, were captivated by features like the hidden floorboard and secret doors. While losing my father and the upheaval of inheriting the villa led to my divorce, the gains have outweighed the losses. The villa has evolved into a treasure trove of memories that I now share with loved ones and visitors alike. It has also sparked a personal transformation, propelling me forward with renewed optimism and hope.
I glanced at my phone, frowning at the caller ID. Patricia. My mother-in-law rarely called, especially not at this hour. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Patricia. Is everything all right?" "Alexis, dear, I'm sorry to bother you, but have you noticed anything strange about Bill lately?" I paused, caught off guard. "Strange? What do you mean?" "Oh, I don't know. He's been so distant lately, barely returns my calls. And when he does, he seems distracted." I walked to the kitchen window, peering out at our manicured lawn. The sprinklers kicked on, misting the air. "I haven't noticed anything unusual. He's been working late, but that's normal this time of year." Patricia sighed heavily. "I suppose. It's just, a mother knows when something's off with her child." "I'm sure it's nothing," I said, more to reassure myself than her. "But I'll keep an eye out. Is there anything specific you're worried about?" There was a long pause on the other end. "Well, it's probably nothing, but I overheard him on the phone the other day. He was speaking in hushed tones, and when I came into the room, he hung up abruptly." My stomach tightened. Who was he talking to? He said it was work, but Alexis, I think it was Clara. I nearly dropped the phone. "Clara? His cousin Clara?" "Yes, I know it sounds crazy, but I swear I heard him say her name." My mind raced. Bill and Clara had always been close, but they drifted apart after our wedding. Why would he be calling her in secret? Patricia, I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. Maybe they're planning a surprise for you? She laughed bitterly. At my age? Doubtful. No, something's not right. I can feel it in my bones. Just then, I heard the garage door opening. Patricia, Bill's home. I should go. Try not to worry, okay? I'll talk to him. I hung up and busied myself at the kitchen counter, trying to calm my racing heart. Bill walked in, loosening his tie. Hey, honey. How was your day? I asked, keeping my voice light. He shrugged, heading for the fridge. Same old. Yours? Fine. Oh, your mom called. Bill stiffened almost imperceptibly. Yeah? What'd she want? I studied his face carefully. She's worried about you. Says you've been distant lately. He rolled his eyes. Mom's always worried about something. I've just been busy with work. She mentioned overhearing you on the phone, thought she heard you talking to Clara. Bill's jaw clenched. That's ridiculous. I haven't spoken to Clara in years. Are you sure? Because your mom seemed pretty certain. He slammed the fridge door shut. Jesus, Alexis. What is this, an interrogation? My mother's paranoid, and now you're buying into it? I took a step back, startled by his outburst. I'm just telling you what she said, no need to get defensive. Bill ran a hand through his hair, sighing. I'm sorry. I'm just stressed from work. Look, I've got a big presentation tomorrow. I need to go over some notes. He brushed past me, heading for his office. I watched him go, a knot forming in my stomach. Something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. Later that night, I lay awake, Bill's steady breathing beside me. Patricia's words echoed in my mind. A mother knows when something's off with her child. I turned to look at my husband's sleeping face. Did I know him as well as I thought I did? Or was there a side to Bill I'd never seen? As sleep finally claimed me, one thought lingered. I had to find out the truth, no matter the cost. The next morning, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me. Bill had left early for his presentation, barely saying goodbye. I found myself staring at the phone, debating whether to call Patricia. Finally, I dialed her number. Alexis, is everything all right? Patricia's voice was laced with concern. I'm not sure, I admitted. Can we meet for coffee? There's a lot I need to ask you. An hour later, I sat across from Patricia at our local cafe, watching her stir her latte absently. She looked tired, worry lines etched deeply around her eyes. Tell me everything, I said softly. About Bill, about Clara. I need to know what's going on. Patricia sighed heavily. It started about 6 months ago. Bill began calling less, making excuses not to visit. When he did come over, he was distracted, always checking his phone. My heart sank. 6 months. How had I not noticed? And Clara? I prompted. Patricia's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of sadness and anger. I overheard him on the phone with her 3 times now, always speaking in hushed tones, always hanging up when I entered the room. What were they talking about? I couldn't make out much, but... Patricia hesitated. One time I heard him say, I miss you too. We'll figure something out. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped my coffee cup tightly, trying to steady myself. There's more, Patricia continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Last month I saw Clara at the grocery store. She was different, glowing almost. And Alexa, she was wearing a necklace I recognized. It was my grandmother's pendant, the one I gave to Bill on his 18th birthday. I felt the blood drain from my face. Are you sure? Patricia nodded grimly. Positive. I confronted Bill about it later, but he brushed it off, said he must have misplaced it years ago. My mind was reeling. The late nights at work, the secretive phone calls, the sudden distance between us. It all started to make a horrifying kind of sense. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, unable to keep the accusation from my voice. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to believe it myself. I hoped I was imagining things, that if I didn't say it out loud, it wouldn't be real. I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. I understand, but Patricia, we need to know for sure. We can't just sit back and let this happen. She nodded, a spark of determination lighting her eyes. What do you want to do? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I'm going to dig deeper, check his emails, his phone records, anything I can find. If there's proof, we'll find it. And if there is, Patricia asked, her voice trembling. I met her gaze, feeling a surge of anger and resolve. Then we make them pay, both of them. As we left the cafe, my phone buzzed, a text from Bill, Working late tonight. Don't wait up. I showed it to Patricia, who shook her head in disgust. He's with her right now, isn't he? The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Probably, I managed to choke out. Patricia pulled me into a fierce hug. We'll get through this, Alexis. Together. As I watched her drive away, I felt a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Anger, betrayal, fear, but also a grim determination. Bill and Clara thought they could fool us, destroy our family without consequences. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I climbed into my car, my hands shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. It was time to hunt for the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. And when I found it, there would be hell to pay. I paced the living room, rehearsing what I'd say to Bill when he got home. The clock ticked past midnight, each second fueling my anger. Finally, I heard his key in the lock. "Hey," Bill said, looking surprised to see me awake. "I thought you'd be in bed." "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He sighed, loosening his tie. "Can it wait? I'm exhausted." "No, it can't." I crossed my arms. "What's going on with you and Clara?" Bill froze, his face a mask of shock before he quickly composed himself. "Clara? What are you talking about?" "Don't lie to me, Bill. Your mother heard you on the phone with her, multiple times." He laughed, but it sounded forced. "Mom's imagining things. You know how she gets." "Is she?" I pressed. "Because she saw Clara wearing your grandmother's pendant, the one you said you lost." Bill's face darkened. "Has my mother been filling your head with these ridiculous stories?" "Alexis, come on. You know me better than that." I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to, but the doubt had taken root, and I couldn't shake it. "Then explain the late nights, the secretive phone calls. Explain why you've been so distant lately." "I told you, work has been crazy. These accusations are insane. Clara's my cousin, for Christ's sake." His anger seemed genuine, but something still felt off. I decided to push harder. "Prove it," I said. "Show me your phone. Let me see your call history, your texts." Bill's eyes widened. "What? No, that's a complete invasion of privacy. I can't believe you don't trust me." "If you have nothing to hide, what's the problem?" He threw up his hands. "The problem is my wife acting like a paranoid lunatic. Listen to yourself, Alexis. This isn't you." Tears stung my eyes. "You're right. This isn't me, but I don't feel like I know you anymore either." Bill's expression softened. He stepped closer, reaching for me. "Honey, I love you. Only you. Whatever your mother-in-law thinks she heard or saw, she's wrong. I would never cheat on you, especially not with Clara." I wanted to fall into his arms to believe every word, but the seed of doubt had grown into a thorny vine, wrapping around my heart. "I need some time," I said, stepping back. I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight." Hurt flashed across Bill's face, quickly replaced by anger. "Fine, if that's what you want, but this conversation isn't over." He stormed off, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts. I sank onto the couch, burying my face in my hands. What if I was wrong? What if Patricia's suspicions were just the paranoid imaginings of a lonely old woman? But then I remembered the look on Bill's face when I mentioned Clara. The way he refused to show me his phone, the months of distance between us. No, something wasn't right, and I was going to find out what. I crept upstairs, pausing outside the guest room. I could hear Bill's muffled voice through the door. He was on the phone. I know, it's complicated. No, she doesn't know anything for sure. We just need to be more careful." My heart pounded so loudly I was sure he'd hear it. I pressed my ear closer to the door. "I'll figure something out, I promise. I love you too." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back, barely making it to our bedroom before collapsing on the bed. It was true. All of it. As the first rays of dawn crept through the window, I made a decision. No more confrontations. No more asking for the truth. It was time to take matters into my own hands. If Bill wouldn't give me answers, I'd find them myself. Let the hunt begin. The next morning, I waited until Bill left for work before springing into action. My hands shook as I booted up his laptop, grateful he'd never changed the password I'd set up years ago. This felt wrong, invasive, but I needed answers. I started with his email, scanning through countless work messages and junk mail. Nothing suspicious. Then I noticed a folder labeled Personal Projects. My heart raced as I clicked it open. There, buried among innocuous files, was an email thread with Clara. I took a deep breath and began to read. "Bill, We can't keep doing this. It's not fair to Alexis or the kids. I know, but I can't imagine my life without you. We'll figure something out, I promise. Maybe we should tell them the truth. It's been months. My vision blurred with tears. Months. They'd been carrying on this affair for months, right under my nose. I kept scrolling, each message twisting the knife deeper. Plans for secret rendezvous, declarations of love, discussions about their future together. It was all there, in black and white. Then I saw it. An email from last week with an attachment. I clicked it open, my breath catching in my throat. It was a receipt for a diamond ring. The room spun around me. Bill was planning to leave me, to start a new life with Clara. How could I have been so blind? I printed out the emails, my hands moving on autopilot. Then I deleted the folder and cleared the browser history. Bill couldn't know I'd seen this, not yet. I called Patricia, my voice barely above a whisper. You were right. About everything. Oh, Alexis, she sighed. I'm so sorry. What are you going to do? I stared at the stack of damning emails on the desk. I don't know, but I can't confront him yet. I need time to think. Of course, dear. Whatever you need, I'm here for you. As I hung up, a notification pinged on my phone, a text from Bill. Working late again, don't wait up. Rage boiled inside me. No more lies, no more secrets. It was time to see this affair with my own eyes. I called our neighbor, asking her to watch the kids for a few hours. Then I got in my car and drove to Bill's office. His car wasn't in the parking lot. My hands gripped the steering wheel as I tried to decide what to do next. Where would they meet? A hotel? Clara's place? Then I remembered something from the emails. A mention of a special spot by the lake. It was worth a shot. I drove to the secluded area, my heart pounding. As I rounded a bend, I saw them. Bill's car, parked next to another I didn't recognize. I killed the engine and crept closer, staying hidden behind the trees. And there they were, standing by the water's edge. Bill and Clara, locked in an embrace. I wanted to scream, to run out and confront them, but something held me back. This was the proof I needed, but it wasn't enough. Not for what I had planned. I took out my phone and snapped a few pictures, my hands surprisingly steady. Then I retreated to my car, unseen. As I drove home, a cold determination settled over me. No more tears, no more doubts. Bill and Clara thought they could destroy our family and get away with it. They were about to learn how wrong they were. I pulled into our driveway, my mind racing with possibilities. It wasn't enough to just confront them. No, they needed to feel the full weight of their betrayal, to experience the same public humiliation they'd subjected me to. I smiled grimly as a plan began to take shape. Patricia had mentioned a family reunion coming up. What better place for a grand revelation? It was time to start planning my revenge. And when I was done, Bill and Clara would regret ever crossing me. I couldn't sleep that night, my mind racing with the images of Bill and Clara by the lake. As dawn broke, I found myself back at Bill's laptop, driven by a desperate need to understand the full extent of their betrayal. This time, I dug deeper, searching through hidden folders and archived messages. What I found shattered any remaining hope I had of salvaging our marriage. There, in a password-protected file, was a detailed plan for their future together. Bank statements showing large transfers to a joint account. Property listings for houses in another state. And most devastating of all, a draft of divorce papers with my name on them. My hands shook as I read through their exchanges, each word a dagger to my heart. I can't wait to start our new life together, away from all this, Clara had written. Bill's response made me physically ill. Soon, my love. Once everything's in place, we'll tell Alexis and be free. Free, as if I was some kind of prison he needed to escape from. I printed everything, adding it to the growing pile of evidence. As I stared at the stack of papers, something inside me snapped. The hurt and betrayal crystallized into a cold, hard rage. I picked up my phone and dialed Patricia's number. Alexis? What's wrong? Her voice was thick with sleep. I need to see you, I said, surprised by the steadiness in my tone. Now. An hour later, we sat at Patricia's kitchen table, the evidence spread out before us. I watched as she read through it all, her face growing paler with each page. My God, she whispered, looking up at me with tears in her eyes. Alexis, I'm so sorry. I never imagined it was this bad. I nodded, my jaw clenched. They were planning to leave, to start a new life together and leave us all behind. Patricia reached out, clasping my hand. What do you want to do? I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I want them to pay. Not just Bill and Clara, but everyone who knew and kept quiet. They all betrayed us, Patricia. They made fools of us. She nodded slowly, a fierce light coming into her eyes. The family reunion. It's in 2 weeks. Everyone will be there. A grim smile spread across my face. Perfect. We'll expose them in front of everyone they've lied to. Let them feel the humiliation they've put us through. Patricia squeezed my hand. Are you sure about this, Alexis? Once we do this, there's no going back. I met her gaze, my resolve hardening. I'm sure. They don't get to just walk away from this. They need to face the consequences of their actions. We spent the next hour plotting, our heads bent together over the kitchen table. As the plan took shape, I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction growing inside me. Just as we were finishing up, my phone buzzed. A text from Bill. Hey honey, running late again. Don't wait up. I showed it to Patricia, who shook her head in disgust. The nerve of him. I stood up, gathering the evidence. I should get back. I need to act normal until the reunion. Patricia walked me to the door, pulling me into a tight hug. Stay strong, Alexis. We'll get through this together. As I drove home, my mind was clear for the first time in weeks. The path ahead was set. In 2 weeks, Bill and Clara's perfect little world would come crashing down around them. I pulled into our driveway, noting Bill's car was still gone. Probably still with her, I thought bitterly. But as I walked into our house, the home we'd built together, filled with memories now tainted, I made a solemn vow. This would be the last night I spent under the same roof as a liar and a cheat. The last night I played the role of the oblivious, devoted wife. In 2 weeks, everything would change, and I would emerge from the ashes of this betrayal stronger than ever. Let the countdown begin. The 2 weeks leading up to the family reunion were the longest of my life. Every moment felt like walking on eggshells, pretending everything was normal while rage simmered just beneath the surface. Bill, oblivious to my knowledge, continued his charade of late nights and work emergencies. Patricia and I spoke daily, fine-tuning our plan. We decided to make a presentation at the reunion, ostensibly to celebrate Bill's recent promotion. In reality, it would be the stage for his downfall. The night before the reunion, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Bill's steady breathing beside me made my skin crawl. How many times had he lied to my face, then crawled into this bed we shared? Morning came, and with it a surge of nervous energy. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made me feel powerful. As I applied my makeup, I caught Bill's appreciative glance in the mirror. You look beautiful, he said, kissing my cheek. Ready for the big day? I forced a smile. More than you know. The drive to Patricia's sprawling estate was tense. Bill chatted about work, about how excited he was to see everyone. I nodded at the right moments, my mind focused on the USB drive and my purse containing all the evidence. As we pulled up, I saw Clara's car already parked in the driveway. My stomach clenched. Look who beat us here, Bill said, a little too casually. I bit back a bitter laugh. What a surprise. The reunion was in full swing when we arrived. Family members I hadn't seen in years greeted us warmly. I watched as Bill and Clara carefully avoided each other, stealing glances when they thought no one was looking. Patricia found me by the punch bowl, her eyes questioning. I nodded slightly. It was time. She clinked her glass, calling for everyone's attention. Thank you all for coming, she began. We're here to celebrate Bill's recent success at work. Alexis and I have prepared a little presentation. Bill, Clara, why don't you come up front? I saw a flicker of panic cross Bill's face, quickly masked. Clara looked confused but moved to join him. My hands shook as I connected the USB to the large TV in Patricia's living room. The familiar desktop appeared, and I opened the folder labeled Bill's Achievements. As you all know, I said, my voice surprisingly steady, Bill has always been dedicated to his work. But recently I discovered just how creative he's been. I clicked on the first file. An email from Bill to Clara appeared on the screen, full of passionate declarations of love. The room fell silent. What is this? Bill demanded, his face pale. I ignored him, clicking through more emails, bank statements, property listings. With each revelation, gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Alexis, stop this right now, Bill hissed, reaching for the remote. I jerked away from him. No, Bill. I'm done stopping. I'm done pretending. I turned to face the stunned family members. For months, Bill and Clara have been carrying on an affair. They've been planning to leave us all behind and start a new life together. Clara let out a choked sob. Bill, you said you'd handle this. The room erupted into chaos. Accusations flew, people took sides. Through it all, I stood firm, Patricia at my side. Bill's face contorted with rage. He lunged for me, but Patricia stepped between us. Don't you dare touch her, she spat. You're no son of mine. As security escorted Bill and Clara out, I felt a strange mix of vindication and emptiness. The truth was out, but at what cost? Patricia squeezed my hand. It's done, she whispered. I nodded, watching as my marriage, my life as I knew it, crumbled around me. But beneath the pain, a spark of something new flickered to life. Freedom. Strength. The chance to rebuild. The storm had broken, but the aftermath was just beginning. The aftermath of the revelation was a whirlwind. Family members crowded around me, some offering comfort, others demanding explanations. Through it all, I stood firm, my eyes fixed on the door where Bill and Clara had disappeared. Patricia's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone, please, let's give Alexis some space. As the crowd dispersed, murmuring in shocked clusters, I felt a hand on my shoulder. I turned to see Uncle George, Bill's father, his face ashen. Is it true? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. All of it? I nodded, my throat tight. I'm sorry, George. I wish it wasn't. He shook his head, eyes brimming with tears. No, Alexis, we're the ones who should be sorry. How could we not have seen? Before I could respond, the door burst open. Bill stormed back in, his face contorted with rage. Clara trailed behind him, mascara streaking her cheeks. How dare you? Bill snarled, advancing on me. You had no right to air our private business like this. I stood my ground, feeling Patricia and George flanking me. No right? You lost any right to privacy when you decided to betray our family. Clara stepped forward, her voice trembling. Alexis, please. We never meant to hurt you. We fell in love. You have to understand. Understand? I laughed bitterly. Understand that my husband and his cousin have been sneaking around behind my back, planning to abandon their families? Please, enlighten me. Bill's eyes darted around the room, taking in the hostile faces of our relatives. This isn't how this was supposed to go, he muttered. No, I agreed. I'm sure you had a much neater exit planned. Tell me, Bill, when were you going to serve me with those divorce papers I found? Before or after you emptied our joint accounts? A collective gasp went through the room. Bill paled, realizing just how much I knew. You went through my personal files? He sputtered. And you went through our vows like they meant nothing. I shot back. Clara stepped between us, her eyes pleading. Please, everyone, we can work this out civilly. There's no need for all this drama. Something inside me snapped. Drama? You want to talk about drama, Clara? How about the drama of explaining to my children why their father abandoned them? Or the drama of facing our friends, our colleagues, knowing everyone will be whispering about how I wasn't enough to keep my husband from straying? I advanced on her, my voice rising. You two didn't just have an affair. You systematically destroyed two families. You lied. You schemed. You betrayed everyone who ever loved you. And for what? A fantasy of running away together? Bill grabbed my arm, his grip painfully tight. That's enough, Alexis. You've had your revenge. Now let's discuss this like adults. I wrenched away from him, my eyes blazing. Don't you dare touch me. We're far past discussion, Bill. You made your choice. Now you get to live with the consequences. Patricia stepped forward, her voice ice cold. Bill, Clara, I think it's time you left. You're no longer welcome in this family. Mom, Bill started, but Patricia held up a hand. No, I've made my decision. Go. As they turned to leave, defeated and humiliated, I felt a sudden wave of exhaustion wash over me. The adrenaline that had carried me through the confrontation ebbed away, leaving me hollow. Patricia wrapped an arm around me, steadying me. It's over, Alexis. You did it. I nodded, watching as Bill and Clara walked out of our lives. But even as relief flooded through me, a new fear took hold. What now? How did I begin to rebuild my life from the ashes of this betrayal? As the door closed behind them, I realized the hardest part of my journey was just beginning. 6 months after the fateful family reunion, I stood in the courthouse, my heart pounding as the judge delivered his verdict. In the matter of Alexis Thompson versus William Thompson, this court grants full custody of the minor children to Mrs. Thompson. Mr. Thompson will have supervised visitation rights to be reviewed in 1 year. I exhaled slowly, feeling Patricia's reassuring hand on my shoulder. We'd done it. The divorce was final and my children were safe. As we left the courtroom, I saw Bill standing alone, looking lost. For a moment, our eyes met. I expected to feel anger, hatred even. Instead, I felt nothing. He was a stranger to me now. Clara left him, Patricia murmured as we walked past. Seems their grand love affair couldn't withstand the scrutiny. I nodded, unsurprised. How are you holding up? I asked her. Patricia's eyes misted over. It's not easy, disowning your own child, but he made his choice. Now we make ours. The following weeks were a whirlwind of change. I sold our family home, unable to bear the memories it held. With Patricia's help, I found a cozy house closer to the kids' school. It was smaller, but it was ours. A fresh start. One evening, as I unpacked boxes in our new living room, my daughter Emma approached me, her face serious. "Mom, are you happy now?" she asked. I paused, considering her question carefully. "I'm getting there, sweetheart. It's been hard, but we're going to be okay." She nodded, then hugged me fiercely. "I'm glad you told the truth about Dad and Aunt Clara, even if it hurt." Tears pricked my eyes as I held her close. Sometimes the truth is painful, but it's always better than living a lie. As Emma went to bed, I found myself on the porch, staring at the stars. Patricia joined me, handing me a glass of wine. "Penny for your thoughts?" she asked. I sighed. I was just thinking about how much has changed. A year ago, I thought I had the perfect life. Now you have a real life, Patricia finished. With all its mess and complications, but it's yours, Alexis. You fought for it. I turned to her, feeling a rush of gratitude. I couldn't have done it without you, Patricia. You've been more than a mother-in-law. You're family. She squeezed my hand. And don't you forget it. We're in this together now. As we sat in comfortable silence, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. The pain of betrayal, the thrill of revenge, the fear of an uncertain future. But through it all, I discovered a strength I never knew I possessed. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from my lawyer. Bill and Clara both served with restraining orders. It's done. I showed Patricia the message, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It really is over, I breathed. She nodded, raising her glass. To new beginnings. I clinked my glass against hers. To family, the ones we choose. As the night deepened around us, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but I was ready to face it. I had my children, I had Patricia, and most importantly, I had myself. The perfect life I thought I had was gone, shattered by betrayal and lies. But in its place, I'd built something stronger, something real, a life of my own making, full of love, truth, and resilience. As I headed inside, I paused at the door, taking one last look at the star-filled sky. Tomorrow was a new day, full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, I couldn't wait to see what it would bring. The end of one chapter, but the beginning of so much more. My story, my terms, my brighter horizon. Chadley, you're going to be a great dad. Thank you for being here. I froze. The voice coming from the DVD player felt like a knife to my heart. I stood in Chadley's office, clutching a dust rag, staring at the screen where a woman, bedridden and sweating, gripped the hand of my husband. Oh my God. Is that my husband's voice? I murmured, unable to tear my eyes away. Liz, Helen's voice broke my trance. She stepped into the room, her face a mask of concern. I think you should put this DVD back for now. We'll figure this out. I ejected the DVD, my hands trembling as I placed it back in its case, careful not to look at the printed label that stared back at me. Rachel's baby. Helen closed the office door behind us as we left. When we were in the kitchen, Helen poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across the table from me. Liz, I know this is shocking, but let's stay calm. We need to understand what's going on. I grasped my cup, trying to draw warmth from it, but it only made the growing chill inside me more apparent. But if it's true, what does it mean for us? Helen sighed, staring into her coffee. We need to find out more before jumping to conclusions. I'll support you, no matter what we discover. She reached out and squeezed my hand, her touch grounding me for a moment. That night, sleep came reluctantly. My mind was a carousel of images. Chadley in the delivery room, his soothing whispers to this woman, Rachel. Part of me wanted to confront him right away, but Helen's words echoed in my mind. We needed answers, and hasty actions wouldn't bring them. In the morning, Helen suggested we hire a private investigator. Liz, you're running your business and dealing with enough stress. Let professionals handle this. You're right. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight on my shoulders, but trying to stay strong. I'll call someone today. By noon, I had an appointment set with Jake Fulton, a private investigator. I want to know everything about Rachel and Chadley's involvement, I told him as we sat in his small office. Jake nodded, his expression one of practiced empathy. We'll get the answers you need. I'll start right away. Over the next few days, Helen and I kept our conversations to necessary topics. Chadley noticed my distant demeanor, but attributed it to my workload. He had no idea about the storm brewing. Jake reported back quickly. Rachel Miller, he began, unfolding what seemed like a saga about my husband's other life. Chadley's frequent business trips, many were visits to her. She lives just 2 towns over. As the pieces clicked into place, my anger bubbled but stayed controlled. Any sign of another man? I asked, remembering the name Dan from the dossier Jake handed us. Jake nodded. Dan Parker. He believed he was the father of Rachel's child. Helen and I decided we needed to talk to Dan. Maybe he had answers or pieces of the puzzle we still missed. Meeting him at a local diner, the air was thick with tension. Dan, we need to talk about Rachel, I began, feeling a strange camaraderie with this man I had never met. His eyes widened with mixed emotions. What's this about? He demanded. Through shared pain, we pieced together a story of deception. Dan had been as fooled as I was. Together, we planned to confront Rachel and Chadley, 2 deceivers caught in their web of lies. Helen's eyes gleamed with determination the next morning. We need to set the stage for this revelation properly. I gave a weary smile. Chadley's birthday is coming up. Perfect timing, isn't it? She nodded. Everyone deserves to know the truth, Liz. But how? I asked, the enormity of the task weighing on me. We'll figure it out, Helen assured me, squeezing my hand once more. We have to. The plan was set in motion. Secrets ready to be unveiled, actions poised to shatter our facades. The kitchen table turned into our war room. Helen and I sifted through the evidence Jake had gathered. Photos, receipts, and notes on Chadley's movements painted a picture of betrayal. There's no denying it now, Helen said, her voice steady but eyes glistening with a mix of anger and sadness. We have to face reality. I nodded, clutching a receipt from a fancy hotel I had never visited. It's worse than I imagined. The tears I had been holding back began to fall. Helen reached over, her hand warm and comforting. Liz, don't panic. We need to understand what's going on. Jumping to conclusions won't help. But if it's true, what does it mean for us? I choked out, the enormity of the situation hitting me all at once. Helen took a deep breath. It means we need to be smart about our next steps. You'll take a break from your business. We'll hire a lawyer to protect your interests. My life felt like it was spiraling out of control. I had to keep my composure, not just for myself, but for the future. I still hoped I could rebuild from this mess. I trusted Helen's wisdom. She had been a rock and a second mother to me. When nighttime fell, the house felt foreign. Chadley came home, kissed my cheek absent-mindedly, and retreated to his study. I sat stiffly on the couch, trying to act normal. The sound of his laughter on old nights felt like a cruel joke now. The following day, I found myself in the polished office of Kim Hathaway, a seasoned family lawyer. Helen joined us for moral support. Liz, tell me what you know so far, Kim prompted, her eyes sharp and attentive. I handed her the folder of evidence we had compiled. I want to know what can be done. I think he has another family. Kim's face softened, but her professional demeanor remained intact. First, we'll file for a separation. I'll also get a restraining order if necessary. Let's take it step by step. Her words gave me a sense of direction. What about Rachel? Is there any legal action we can take against her too? Kim leaned back, contemplating. If she's defrauded you and Dan, there might be grounds, but we need irrefutable evidence first. We thanked her and left the office with a clearer plan. My resolve hardened with each step I took. I had lost enough sleep, enough joy. It was time to reclaim some control. Back home, Helen and I reviewed the newly gained information about Dan. The man seemed genuine, as hurt by Rachel's lies as I was. We decided to confront him directly, hoping to form a united front. Meeting Dan had been tense, but oddly cathartic. Joining forces felt like a step toward justice. The next big hurdle was Rachel. We tracked her down to a small cafe she frequented. Helen and I walked in, our presence immediately capturing Rachel's attention. Her smile vanished, replaced by a mask of wariness. "Rachel," I began, my voice surprisingly steady, "we need to talk. Now." She hesitated, then nodded, motioning us to a secluded corner. Her discomfort mirrored my own. "What do you want?" Rachel asked, eyes darting between us. "Answers," I replied firmly. "We know about Chadley and the child." Her eyes flashed with something. Guilt, fear, perhaps both. "I don't know what you think you know," she started. "No games," Helen interjected, her voice cold but controlled. "We have evidence. Your lies end here." Rachel's shoulders slumped slightly, and I could see the fight leaving her. She realized the game was up. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll tell you everything." Her admission felt like a victory, but also a bitter confirmation of our worst fears. The path ahead was clear now. We needed to expose Chadley, and it began with a confrontation that would shake our family to its core. My fingers tapped restlessly on the desk as Jake updated me on the latest findings. The private investigator's office felt suffocating, crammed with files and the scent of stale coffee. "Liz," Jake started, adjusting his glasses. "We've uncovered more about Rachel. She's been living off Chadley's money. They've also co-signed on an apartment lease." Helen gripped my shoulder, her fury barely concealed. "So he's been funding her life while we struggled? Unbelievable." I sank deeper into my chair, feeling a cocktail of betrayal and determination. "And Dan? What's his involvement?" Jake handed over a series of surveillance photos. "Rachel's been stringing him along, making him believe he's the father. He's been covering additional expenses, private school applications, medical bills." Helen's eyes narrowed. "Rachel's been playing everyone for fools." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "What about business trips? How often did he visit her?" "More than half," Jake replied, flipping through some documents. "She lives in a neighboring town, but they met up during business trips too. She has proof of their meetings, texts and emails." "Rachel's been smart," Helen muttered, "but not smart enough." There was a pause before Jake spoke again. "What's the next step for you, Liz?" I clenched my fists. "I want every detail exposed. Let's talk to the lawyer. That woman, Rachel, she must be held accountable too." Kim Hathaway's office was as pristine as ever. She listened intently as we described Rachel's manipulations. "Liz," Kim began, "your situation warrants comprehensive action. We'll start with legal separation from Chadley. Gathering more concrete proof of the fraud will be vital." "What about Rachel?" I asked. "We could potentially charge her with fraud," Kim said, her eyes sharp. "But we need irrefutable evidence." I nodded. "We have to move fast. Chadley's birthday is approaching. It's the perfect chance to confront them both." Back at home, Helen and I busied ourselves with preparations. I had to act normal around Chadley, which made my skin crawl. Each time he smiled or tried to be affectionate felt like a betrayal all over again. The day before Chadley's birthday party, Helen and I met up with Dan. We filled him in on our plan, and he seemed ready for a showdown. "You have to confront them at the party, Dan," I said, feeling more like a general than a woman whose life was falling apart. "Everyone will be there, family, friends, they need to see the truth." Dan looked grim but determined. "I'll be there." The day of the party arrived. Helen and I moved through the motions of hosting as if everything was perfect. Guests filled the living room, laughing and chatting, unaware of the storm brewing. Chadley entered, surprised by the gathering, friends clapping, Helen hugging him. "Happy birthday," echoed through the house. I forced a smile, knowing the moment was near. As the cake was being cut, I nodded to Dan, who had positioned himself near the entertainment center. He gave us the signal and quietly inserted the damning DVD. The room darkened as the screen sprang to life. "Liz, what the hell are you doing?" Chadley's voice was sharp, cutting through the room's cheerful atmosphere. "Silence. Chadley, watch," Helen demanded, her voice steady even as my heart pounded in my chest. Gasps filled the room as the video played. Chadley's comforting coos to Rachel as she pushed through labor, his gentle touch that had once been reserved for me, now public for everyone to see. The shockwaves of revelation rippled through the assembly. Family members whispered, friends looked horrified. I stepped forward, feeling strength surge through my veins. "This is who Chadley really is," I declared, "living a double life, with Rachel, who stole your trust and love, Dan." Dan stepped up, his voice resolute. We have proof of their betrayal. DNA tests show Chadley isn't the father. Rachel lied. The room descended into chaos, but in the middle of it, I felt an unexpected calm. The lies were exposed, and the path to justice had begun. The room was a cauldron of confusion and disbelief. Chadley's face turned ashen, beads of sweat forming on his brow as he locked eyes with me. Liz, you had no right. Save it, I snapped, my voice slicing through his excuses. You lied to all of us. Helen stood beside me, her presence a fortress of support. This has to stop, Chadley. You've hurt too many people. Dan stepped forward, his eyes burning with betrayal. Rachel, we need to talk. About everything. Rachel's eyes darted around the room, looking for an escape. Dan, I can explain. Explain? Dan's voice was sharp. You used me. Lied to me. Chadley tried to regain control of the situation. Everyone, please, let's not make a scene. Too late for that, Helen interjected. You made your choices. Rachel finally found her voice, though it trembled. I never intended for anyone to get hurt. Stop lying, I shouted, feeling my emotions surge. All you did was lie. Rachel turned to Dan, tears streaming down her face. Dan, please, I need you to believe me. He shook his head, disgust shaping his features. You're poison, Rachel, to everyone you touch. Relatives and friends began to whisper, their faces masked in a mix of shock and disgust. No one seemed to side with Chadley or Rachel. It was clear their deceit had dug their own graves. Trying to salvage a shred of dignity, Chadley approached me. Liz, can we talk privately? I took a step back, crossing my arms. There's nothing to talk about, not anymore. Helen raised a hand, signaling for silence. Everyone deserves to know what kind of people Chadley and Rachel are. There should be no secrets left to fester. Seeing he had no allies, Chadley's desperation grew. Liz, please, I'm begging you. Begging is for the guilty, I stated coldly, and you're as guilty as they come. Dan wasn't any more forgiving. Rachel, I'm suing you. Fraud, emotional distress, the works. Rachel collapsed into a chair, finally defeated. I never meant for it to go this far. Helen's eyes were filled with steely determination. Maybe you should have thought of that before betraying everyone you claimed to care about. The room fell into a strained silence, the enormity of the situation starting to settle. Chadley and Rachel looked around, finding only judgment and disdain. Helen and I nodded to each other, an unspoken understanding passing between us. I'm filing for divorce, I announced, the finality of the words echoing in the stillness. You're no longer part of my life. Chadley's shoulders slumped. He realized that not only had he lost me, but also the respect of everyone gathered. Enough, I said, turning away from him. This is over. With a final glance, Helen and I began to escort our guests out, thanking them for coming and apologizing for the scene. The weight of relief mixed with sorrow felt surreal. As the door closed behind the last guest, Helen looked at me. We did it, Liz. It's done. I nodded, feeling a tear slide down my cheek. Thank you for standing by me, Helen. I wouldn't have survived this without you. Helen hugged me tightly. We're family, and we're stronger than ever. Inside, I knew there were more battles ahead. Legalities, emotional wounds, and rebuilding my life without Chadley. But for now, the first and most important step had been taken, facing the truth head-on and refusing to live a lie. Dan approached us before leaving. We're in this together now, he said, holding out his hand. I shook it. Thank you, Dan, for everything. He nodded, grim but resolute. We'll get through this, all of us. As I closed the door, I felt a strange mix of exhaustion and newfound strength. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, I was content, knowing the truth had finally seen the light. The shadows were lifting, and with them, the promise of a better future. The days leading up to the confrontation were a blur of preparations. Helen and I decided Chadley's upcoming surprise birthday party would be the perfect moment to unveil the truth. We needed to ensure that everyone who mattered was there. So, how do we do this? I asked Helen one afternoon as we sorted through the guest list. Simple, she said, tapping the list with a pen. We gather everyone together and play the DVD. The shock will do the rest. The plan was set. Chadley's birthday morning was oddly tranquil. I prepared a light breakfast, trying to act like everything was normal. Chadley, blissfully unaware, joked about his age and what a wonderful wife I was. My smile was tight, but he didn't notice. Don't forget, we've got that dinner tonight, I said, hiding the tremor in my voice. Wouldn't miss it for the world, Chadley said with a wink. His affection felt like acid on my skin. The evening arrived, and the house filled with guests. Relatives and close friends chatted, unaware of the drama about to unfold. I spotted Dan lingering near the doorway, and we exchanged nods of encouragement. As we gathered in the living room, I caught Helen's eye. She nodded subtly. Time to set the stage. Thank you all for coming, Helen announced, smiling warmly. We have a special surprise for Chadley. He beamed, looking around at everyone. You guys shouldn't have. You deserve it, I said, my words double-edged. Helen moved to the TV, inserting the dreaded DVD. As the screen lit up, Chadley looked confused. His confusion turned to horror as Rachel's face appeared, contorted in labor. The room fell silent, all eyes glued to the damning footage. What is this? Chadley's voice shook, a mix of anger and panic creeping into his tone. Keep watching, Helen commanded, her voice icy. The video continued, showing Chadley's intimate moments with Rachel. Gasps filled the room, whispers of disbelief spreading like wildfire. Liz, turn this off. This is a mistake, Chadley pleaded, but I shook my head. No mistakes here, Chadley. Just the truth. Rachel, who had timidly stood at the back, now stepped forward, head bowed. I'm sorry, everyone. Dan pushed to the front, fury etched on his face. You think sorry fixes this? You destroyed lives, Rachel. Chadley's face twisted with desperation. Liz, please, we can talk about this. Helen stepped in front of me, shielding me from his reach. You've done enough talking, Chadley. It's time everyone knew who you really are. The guests were no longer whispering. Outright exclamations of anger and betrayal echoed through the room. Chadley looked around, realizing no one was on his side. No more lies, I said firmly. This marriage is over. I want a divorce. Chadley's shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked at Rachel, who was crying. Rachel, how could you? Rachel looked up, her eyes red and swollen. I never meant to hurt anyone, Chadley, Dan scoffed. Too late for that. You hurt all of us. Helen, ever the matriarch, faced the crowd. Now you all know the truth. These two have betrayed us. The only thing left is justice. The room was filled with a mix of redemption and sorrow. It was the end of an era for our family, but also a new beginning. Chadley and Rachel stood there, exposed and broken. I watched as the last few guests left, unable to shake the sense of finality hovering in the air. Helen turned to me, her eyes filled with both sadness and relief. We did what needed to be done, she said softly. I nodded, feeling the weight of our actions, but also an unexpected lightness. The truth was out. Now we could begin to heal. We'll get through this, Liz, Dan said, placing a reassuring hand on my shoulder. All of us. Helen gave me a tight hug. We're here for each other now. Always. As I closed the door on that harrowing evening, I felt a strange sense of peace. The storm had passed, and the path ahead, though difficult, was clear. The aftermath of the confrontation hung heavy in the air. Chadley and Rachel were in shambles, their charades demolished. The room had emptied, but the echo of their deceit lingered. Liz, let's talk, Chadley pleaded, his face an agonized mask. Please, give me a chance to explain. There's nothing left to explain, I said coldly, my voice steadier than I felt. It's over. I'm filing for divorce. He grabbed my arm, desperation tinging his touch. You can't just end us like this. We've been through so much. Helen stepped forward, prying his hand off me with a firm grip. Don't you dare touch her, Chadley. You're not welcome here anymore. Chadley's eyes narrowed, anger bubbling beneath the surface. You always took her side, even when she was wrong. Helen didn't flinch. I stood by what was right. Clearly, that wasn't you. Rachel stood to the side, sniffling and wiping tears. She eyed Dan, hoping for some sympathy. Dan, I'm so sorry. Please, we can work this out. Dan's face was etched with betrayal and fury. Rachel, there's nothing left to work out. You lied to me, to everyone. I'm suing you for fraud. You should get a lawyer. Rachel collapsed into a chair, her sobs growing louder. I never meant for it to go this far. I watched the scene unfold, feeling an odd mix of vindication and sorrow. The damage was done, and all that was left was to move forward. Chadley turned to me with pleading eyes. Liz, please, let's not do this. Think about us, our memories, everything we've built. Everything we built was a lie, I said, my voice thick. There's no going back. He sank to his knees, head in his hands. I'll never forgive myself for this. Helen's gaze was steely. Good. You shouldn't. Dan, weary but resolute, shook his head. Chadley, Rachel, Whatever you hope to salvage, it's gone. You did this to yourselves. It was a strange sight, seeing Chadley, once so composed, now crumbling before me. The room felt too small, filled with the weight of our shattered lives. Helen took my hand, guiding me away from the wreckage. "We have preparations to make," she said softly. "This is just the beginning." The next few days were a whirlwind of legal meetings and paperwork. Kim Hathaway guided us meticulously through the process, ensuring I was protected. Dan was relentless in his pursuit of justice against Rachel. "We need to finalize the DNA tests," Kim instructed. "Dan, if this goes to court, we need irrefutable proof." Dan nodded, a hardened look settling on his face. "We will." Throughout the ordeal, Helen remained my rock. "You're doing the right thing, Liz. We'll come out stronger." One evening, we sat in the living room, the silence thick between us. I finally voiced the question that had been haunting me. "Helen, do you think I'll ever feel normal again?" She wrapped an arm around my shoulders. "Normal might look different, but yes, you will find peace again." Finally, the day came for Chadley to move out. His presence felt ghostly as he packed, casting hollow glances around our home. He tried to speak, but I cut him off. "Save your breath, Chadley. There's nothing you can say that will change this." As he walked out the door, bags in hand, a heavy silence filled the space he left behind. Helen and I sat together, the vast emptiness of the house wrapping around us. "We survived this," Helen said quietly, "and we're stronger for it." "Yeah," I agreed, staring out the window at the departing figure of my former husband. "We are." The road to healing would be long, but I knew I wasn't alone. With Helen and Dan by my side, we faced the future, with a resilience forged in the fires of betrayal, and together we would rebuild, brick by brick, into something unbreakable. The court was oppressive, with its cold walls and judgmental air. Rachel sat at one of the tables, looking fragile and defeated. Her once confident demeanor had vanished, replaced by a haunting vulnerability. I watched her, feeling a peculiar mix of pity and wrath. Kim stood beside me, her confidence a balm to my frayed nerves. "This won't be easy, Liz," she said quietly, "but it's necessary." Dan sat across from us, his posture straight, his face a mask of determination. We exchanged a nod, an unspoken pact of solidarity. Today was the day we held Rachel and Chadley accountable. The judge entered, and the court came to order. Rachel's lawyer rose, attempting a defense soaked in rationalizations. "Your Honor," he began, "my client deeply regrets her actions. She never intended for things to spiral out of control. Her intent was not deceit but desperation." Dan's lawyer, a stern woman named Grace, stood elegantly. "Intent does not negate impact, Your Honor. Rachel Miller knowingly deceived multiple parties, causing emotional and financial damage." Rachel's lawyer continued to plead her case. Rachel was under immense stress. She believed she was providing for her child. Grace interjected, "By defrauding two men and emotionally scarring numerous people, that's hardly justifiable." The judge nodded thoughtfully before turning to Rachel. "Miss Miller, do you have anything to say?" Rachel stood shakily, eyes darting between us. I'm truly sorry. I know I hurt people, but I was scared. I didn't know what else to do." Dan's voice cut through the court with icy precision. "You didn't know what to do. How about telling the truth?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Dan, you have to believe me. I was lost." "Lost?" Dan's anger was palpable. "You were selfish. You used us." Helen squeezed my hand under the table, her presence steadying me. Kim remained focused, her eyes locked on Rachel. Chadley's turn came, as he had to testify regarding his involvement. He walked up to the stand, his once confident demeanor now shattered. "Mr. Monroe, were you aware of Miss Miller's deceit?" Grace asked. Chadley swallowed hard, looking down. "Not fully, no. I was led to believe I was the father of her child." Grace's gaze was unrelenting. "So you claim ignorance?" He nodded slightly. Yes." Dan's face contorted with fury. "You're a liar, Chadley." The judge raised a hand. "Order in the court." Kim took her turn. "Mr. Monroe, you claim you were ignorant, yet you continued to maintain a relationship with Miss Miller. How do you explain that?" Chadley shifted uncomfortably. "I thought I was doing the right thing." "And your wife?" Kim pressed on. "Did she deserve the lies?" He had no answer, his silence speaking louder than any words could. The judge looked at Chadley with disdain. "Mr. Monroe, your actions were not justifiable." As testimonies wrapped up, the judge took a moment before delivering the verdict. In light of the evidence and the profound deceit involved, I find Rachel Miller guilty of fraud and emotional distress. Custody of the child will be reevaluated. Chadley Monroe's involvement, while not fully complicit, played a crucial role in the damages caused. The courtroom's tension broke slightly with murmurs of approval. Dan looked relieved, though still burdened by the ordeal. Helen gave my hand a final squeeze. "Justice," she whispered. Outside the courtroom, Dan approached me. "We did it, Liz. We stood up for ourselves." I nodded, finally feeling a semblance of closure. "Yes, we did." Chadley walked past us, eyes downcast. He stopped briefly as if to say something, but then continued walking away without a word. Rachel was taken into custody, leaving behind a mess of shattered lives. Despite the relief of justice, a lingering sadness remained. The damage was done, the wounds deep. Helen, Dan, and I walked out together, finding solace in unity. "We'll heal," Helen said, her voice a promise. Dan added, "We have each other now. We'll get through this." As we stepped into the fresh air, I felt a weight lift. The path to recovery was long, but I was no longer walking it alone. The shadows of betrayal had been cast off, replaced by a newfound strength and the support of those who mattered most. The weeks following the court verdict felt like emerging from a long, dark tunnel. Helen, Dan, and I started to piece our lives back together, slowly but surely. One afternoon, Helen and I sat in the living room, sorting through old photo albums. The pictures felt like relics from a different era. "Look at this," she said, holding up a picture of Chadley and me on our wedding day. "You looked so happy." I sighed, taking the photo from her. "It feels like a lifetime ago, but I'm grateful for where we are now." "Same here," Helen replied, her eyes softening. "We have each other, and that's what matters." Just then, my phone rang. It was Kim Hathaway. "Liz, I wanted to update you on the custody hearing for Rachel's child." My heart raced. "What's the news?" "Dan has been granted temporary custody," Kim said. "We need to ensure the child's well-being during this period." "That's great news," I said, relief washing over me. "Dan will be thrilled." After hanging up, I called Dan immediately. He picked up on the first ring. "Hey, Liz, what's up?" "I'm calling with good news. You've been granted temporary custody." Dan exhaled deeply, the weight of the past months visible in his voice. "Thank you, Liz. This means a lot." Later that day, Dan came by with his son, little Jake. The boy clutched a toy car, eyes wide with curiosity. "Hey, Jake, this is Aunt Liz," Dan introduced. "Hi, Jake," I said, kneeling to his level. "Want to see a cool toy room?" Jake nodded enthusiastically and disappeared upstairs with Helen, leaving Dan and me alone in the kitchen. "Liz, I can't thank you enough for everything," Dan began, his voice filled with gratitude. "We're in this together," I replied. "How are you holding up?" "Better, knowing Jake's with me," he said, running a hand through his hair. "But there's still a lot to figure out." Helen returned, smiling. "Jake's enjoying the toys. He's got a lot of questions, though," Dan chuckled. "That's Jake for you." As the evening progressed, we shared stories and laughter, a stark contrast to the turmoil we'd faced. It felt like the start of something new, something hopeful. A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail. It was from Chadley. My hands shook slightly as I opened it, bracing myself for whatever it contained. "Liz, I know I'm the last person you want to hear from, but I need you to understand how sorry I am. I've lost everything because of my own actions. My wife, my integrity, and the respect of everyone I care about. I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope you find peace in knowing that I deeply regret all I've done." Chadley, I read the letter twice, processing his words. Helen found me in the kitchen, the letter clenched in my hand. "What's that?" she asked gently. "A letter from Chadley," I said, passing it to her. Helen read it and looked up, her eyes thoughtful. "He's trying to make amends in his own way." "Too little, too late," I replied. "But at least he acknowledges his mistakes." "That's something," Helen agreed. "But we have more important things to focus on now." We spent the evening planning activities for Jake, making sure Dan felt supported in his new role as a single father. The sense of family grew stronger, weaving its threads tighter around us. In the weeks that followed, we established new routines and created new memories. Dan and Jake became regular fixtures at our home, filling the space with laughter and warmth. One night, as we gathered for dinner, Dan raised his glass. "To new beginnings, and to the family we've found in each other." "To us," Helen and I echoed, clinking our glasses together. As I looked around the table, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. We had survived our darkest days and emerged stronger, bonded by resilience and the promise of a brighter future. The scars would fade, but the strength we found in each other would remain forever. I pulled up to the house I had called home for over 30 years, and my heart sank. The familiar colonial-style facade was gone, replaced by sleek modern lines and a fresh coat of gray paint. A massive for sale sign stood defiantly on the perfectly manicured lawn. "Dennis, what's going on? I didn't authorize this!" I exclaimed as he emerged from the front door, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Relax, Maggie. You should have been here. Now it's out of our hands," he replied dismissively, waving a hand towards the renovated property. My mind raced, trying to process the jarring changes. This was my family's home, filled with memories and history. How could he make such drastic decisions without consulting me? As I stepped inside, the gut punch intensified. Gone were the warm, familiar tones and furnishings I had carefully curated over the years. In their place, a stark, minimalist design that felt cold and unwelcoming. "Mom's been a godsend overseeing the whole project," Dennis said, his tone almost mocking. "She knows what's best for us." There she was, my mother-in-law Joan, surveying the transformed space with a self-satisfied smirk. "It was time for an update, Maggie. This place was stuck in the past, just like you." Her words stung, but I bit my tongue. After months of caring for my ailing parents, I didn't have the energy for another battle with Joan's passive-aggressive jabs. "Where are my things?" I asked, dreading the answer. "We had to make room for the new look," Joan replied dismissively. "Don't worry, we kept a few sentimental pieces in storage." Storage? My stomach churned at the thought of my cherished belongings, collected over a lifetime, carelessly packed away. As I wandered through the hollow, unfamiliar rooms, an overwhelming sense of betrayal washed over me. This was no longer my home. It was a staged set, stripped of warmth and soul. In the kitchen, I found Dennis poring over paperwork with a young, attractive woman I didn't recognize. They looked up, their expressions a mixture of surprise and guilt. "Maggie, you're back early," Dennis stammered. "This is Sarah, our realtor. She's been invaluable in getting the house ready for market." Sarah extended a perfectly manicured hand, her smile saccharine sweet. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Margaret. Dennis has told me so much about you." I forced a tight smile, my mind reeling. Ready for market? They were selling my family's home without my consent? As Sarah droned on about staging and curb appeal, I tuned her out, my gaze fixed on Dennis. His eyes averted mine, and in that moment, I realized the depth of his deception. This wasn't just about the house. It was a calculated betrayal, orchestrated by Dennis and enabled by his ever-controlling mother. A cold, sinking feeling gripped me as I recognized the true extent of how little they valued my input or respected my place in this family. I had been naive, blind to the cracks forming in the foundation of my life. But now, the veil had been lifted, and I saw the harsh reality staring back at me. This was no longer my home. It was a battlefield, and I would have to fight to reclaim what was rightfully mine. I sat numbly on the edge of the bed in the guest room, my mind replaying the events of the day like a broken record. How could Dennis do this to me, to us? After 30 years of marriage, of building a life together, he had thrown it all away without a second thought. As the shock began to subside, a familiar ache settled in my chest, the dull ache of disappointment I had grown accustomed to over the years. I should have seen the signs, the subtle shifts in his behavior that I had chosen to ignore, desperate to cling to the illusion of the perfect family. Dennis had always been distant, more focused on his work and hobbies than on cultivating our relationship. But I had foolishly believed that was just his way, that deep down he still loved and cherished me. Now the truth was laid bare. I had simply been a convenient accessory in his life, easily discarded when something shinier came along. And Joan, my own mother-in-law, the woman who should have been my closest ally, had been the architect of this betrayal all along. Her constant belittling, her snide remarks about my capabilities as a wife and mother, they had all been carefully calculated jabs, chipping away at my self-worth until I was too broken to fight back. Tears stung my eyes as I remembered the countless times I had defended her to my own family, making excuses for her behavior. She's just old-fashioned, I would say. She means well, deep down. But the truth was, Joan had never accepted me as part of her family. To her, I was an interloper, a threat to the twisted, codependent bond she shared with her son. The sound of laughter from downstairs snapped me back to reality. Dennis and Joan, celebrating their victory over me, no doubt reveling in the spoils of their deception. My fists clenched involuntarily, a surge of anger replacing the sadness that had consumed me moments before. I thought of my parents, the way their faces had lit up when Dennis and I had first brought them to this house, our forever home. They had trusted him, believed in the life we were building together, and now their legacy, the home they had gifted us out of love, was being sold off like a piece of merchandise, all for Dennis's selfish gain. A renewed sense of determination washed over me. I would not let them win. Not this time. Rising from the bed, I began to gather my things, my mind already formulating a plan. First, I needed evidence, proof of Dennis's misdeeds that not even Joan could deny or spin in her favor. Then, I would rally my troops, the friends and family who had stood by me through thick and thin, the ones who had always seen through Joan's false pretenses. This was war, and I would fight with everything I had to reclaim what was rightfully mine, my home, my dignity, my life. Dennis and Joan had made the mistake of underestimating me, of believing I would simply roll over and accept their betrayal. Well, they were in for a rude awakening. As I zipped up my suitcase, a small, defiant smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was ready to show them just how strong I could be when pushed to my limits. This was only the beginning. I stared at the suitcase on the bed, my mind racing with 1,000 thoughts and emotions. Part of me wanted nothing more than to flee, to put as much distance as possible between myself and the toxic web of lies that had ensnared my life. But another part, the part that had been beaten down and gaslit for years, hesitated. Could I really just walk away from everything I had built? A familiar voice in the back of my mind whispered insidiously, "This is your fault, Maggie. If you had been a better wife, a better daughter-in-law, none of this would have happened." I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to drown out the voice that sounded eerily like Joan's. That wretched woman had spent decades chipping away at my self-worth, always quick with a backhanded compliment or subtle jab about my shortcomings. And Dennis, my so-called partner, had stood idly by, letting her toxic influence fester until it had poisoned our entire relationship. Flashes of memory assaulted me, moments I had tried so hard to forget. Joan criticizing my cooking at family dinners, her thin lips curled in a perpetual sneer. Dennis brushing off my concerns about her behavior, insisting I was overreacting. The way she had swooped in like a vulture when my parents fell ill, insinuating that I was an ungrateful daughter for needing to care for them. "If you cared enough about your own family, you wouldn't leave for months, Maggie," she had said, her voice dripping with false concern. At the time, I had bitten my tongue, too overwhelmed by the situation to stand up for myself. But now the memory ignited a spark of defiance deep within me. How dare she question my devotion to my family when she had spent years actively undermining and sabotaging my relationships? I thought of my parents, their faces etched with worry as I had left to tend to their recovery. They had trusted Dennis, believed that he would support me through that difficult time. Little did they know, he had used my absence as an opportunity to further his own selfish agenda, aided and abetted by his manipulative mother. A renewed sense of determination washed over me. I would not let them win. Not this time. If Dennis and Joan wanted a war, then a war they would get. Zipping up the suitcase with a decisive tug, I squared my shoulders and headed for the door. There would be no more running, no more hiding. It was time to gather my troops and fight for what was rightfully mine. My home, my family, my life. As I descended the stairs, I could hear Joan's shrill voice echoing from the kitchen, no doubt berating Dennis for his latest failure. A small, grim smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. They had no idea what was coming. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, taking a deep breath to steady myself. Then, with a newfound sense of purpose, I strode towards the kitchen, ready to face my adversaries head-on. No more Mrs. Nice Maggie. It was time to take back control of my life, no matter what it took. I strode into the kitchen, my heart pounding with a mixture of rage and determination. There they were, Dennis and Joan, seated at the table like a pair of co-conspirators, their expressions a blend of smugness and disdain. Well, if it isn't the prodigal daughter-in-law, Joan sneered, her thin lips curling into a familiar sneer, to what do we owe the pleasure of your presence? Before I could respond, Dennis cut in, his voice dripping with condescension. You have no idea what we've been through, managing everything you abandoned. He gestured broadly at the newly renovated space around us. We had to take matters into our own hands. I felt my hands ball into fists at my sides as I surveyed the changes they had made to my home. Our home. Gone were the warm, inviting tones and cherished family heirlooms I had carefully curated over the years. In their place, a cold, sterile aesthetic that felt utterly devoid of personality or sentiment. Where are my things? I demanded, fighting to keep my voice steady. Joan waved a dismissive hand. We need to move on, Maggie. This house isn't yours to hold us back any longer. Her words hit me like a physical blow, and in that moment the full weight of their betrayal crashed over me like a tidal wave. They had not only disrespected me, but they had desecrated the very legacy my parents had entrusted to us, the home they had gifted us out of love and trust. Rage bubbled up from deep within me, a primal, visceral fury that I had never experienced before. How dare they? How dare they trample on everything that was sacred, everything that had once been so precious to our family? You had no right, I seethed, my voice trembling with barely contained anger. This was never just your decision to make. Dennis scoffed, leaning back in his chair with an infuriating air of nonchalance. Don't be so dramatic, Maggie. It's just a house. We're doing what's best for our future. Our future? I echoed incredulously. Or yours, Dennis? Yours and that little tramp you've been sneaking around with? His eyes widened, and for a brief moment I saw a flicker of fear cross his features. Joan, however, remained unmoved, her expression hardening into a mask of cold indifference. So you figured it out, she said coolly. I must say I'm surprised it took you this long. You were always a bit slow on the uptake, weren't you, dear? Her words were like a slap in the face, but I refused to let her see how deeply they stung. Instead, I straightened my shoulders and met her icy gaze head-on. It's time you realized, Maggie, that you were never truly part of this family, she continued, her voice laced with venom. You were always an outsider, a mere accessory to be tolerated for Dennis's sake. In that moment, everything became crystal clear. The years of subtle jabs and undermining, the way they had so easily cast me aside the moment I became an inconvenience, it had all been part of their twisted game, a slow, methodical erosion of my sense of self-worth and belonging. But no more. I would not be their victim, their punching bag, any longer. You're wrong, Joan, I said, my voice steady and resolute. This family, this legacy, it's mine just as much as it is yours, and I'll be damned if I let you destroy it for your own selfish gains. Dennis opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, silencing him with a single withering glare. Don't bother, Dennis. The lies end here. I know everything. About your affair, about the way you've been squandering my inheritance to fund your mistress's little business ventures. It's all going to come out, one way or another. For the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in Joan's eyes, a crack in her carefully constructed facade of indifference. She knew, deep down, that I had finally found the strength to fight back, and that terrified her more than anything. A small, triumphant smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. The battle lines had been drawn, and for once I held the upper hand. This was only the beginning of their reckoning. The smug looks on Dennis and Joan's faces quickly faded as the weight of my words sank in. I could see the fear flickering in their eyes, the realization that I was no longer the meek, compliant woman they had grown accustomed to controlling. How did you find out? Dennis sputtered, his bravado crumbling under the intensity of my gaze. Did you really think you could keep it all a secret forever? I scoffed. The shady financial dealings, the late nights at the office, it was only a matter of time before the truth came out. Joan's expression hardened, her lips pressing into a thin, disapproving line. So you've been snooping through our affairs, have you? How typical of you, Maggie, to resort to such underhanded tactics. I leveled my gaze at her, refusing to be cowed by her condescending tone. Don't try to play the victim here, Joan. You're just as guilty as Dennis in all of this. Turning to my husband, I felt a surge of disgust and betrayal rise up within me. How could you do this to me, Dennis? To our family? After everything we've been through together, how could you throw it all away for her? The words tumbled out before I could stop them, the hurt and anger I had bottled up for so long finally spilling over. Was I not enough for you? Did our marriage, our vows mean nothing to you? Dennis opened his mouth, but I held up a hand, silencing him. No, don't bother trying to explain it away. I know all about your little fling with Sarah, the real estate agent you've been using to funnel my inheritance into her business ventures. Joan's eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of genuine surprise cross her features. Clearly, even she hadn't been privy to the full extent of Dennis's deception. That's right, I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. I know about the shady deals, the secret accounts, all of it. And I have proof. Reaching into my bag, I pulled out a thick manila envelope stuffed with financial records, copies of incriminating emails, and other damning evidence I had painstakingly gathered over the past few weeks. You see, while you two were busy plotting behind my back, I was doing a little digging of my own. And what I found was a web of lies and betrayal that goes deeper than I ever could have imagined. Dennis's face had drained of color, his eyes darting nervously between me and the envelope in my hands. Joan, however, remained stubbornly defiant, her chin jutting out in a show of false bravado. So what? She sneered. You have a few pieces of paper. That doesn't change the fact that you were never truly part of this family, Maggie. You were always an outsider, a mere accessory to be tolerated for Dennis's sake. Her words cut deep, but I refused to let her see how much they stung. Instead, I met her gaze head-on, my resolve unwavering. You're wrong, Joan, I said, my voice steady and resolute. This family, this legacy, it's mine just as much as it is yours, and I'll be damned if I let you destroy it for your own selfish gains. A heavy silence hung in the air, the weight of my words settling over us like a thick fog. For a moment, it seemed as though time itself had frozen, the three of us locked in a silent battle of wills. Then, without warning, Joan's composure cracked. Her face contorted into a mask of rage, and she slammed her fist down on the table with surprising force. How dare you? She spat, her voice trembling with barely contained fury. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? With accusations and threats? I held her gaze, unflinching. I'm not threatening anyone, Joan. I'm simply stating the facts. And the fact is, you and Dennis have betrayed me in the worst possible way. But it ends here, today. No more lies, no more secrets. Turning to Dennis, I felt a pang of sadness mixed with resolve. I loved you, Dennis. Truly, I did. But this... I gestured around the cold, sterile room that had once been our warm, inviting home. This is too much. You've crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. His eyes pleaded with me, silently begging for forgiveness, but I had made up my mind. There was no going back, not after everything that had happened. It's over, I said, my voice heavy with finality. The life we had, the dreams we shared, it's all gone, Dennis, and you have no one to blame but yourself. With those words, I turned and walked away, leaving them to stew in the wreckage of their own making. It was time to start anew, to rebuild my life on my own terms, without the constant weight of their manipulation and betrayal holding me back. As I stepped out into the crisp evening air, a sense of liberation washed over me. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt truly free, and I would savor every moment of it. The weight of Dennis and Joan's betrayal hung heavy on my shoulders as I left the house that had once been my home. But even in the depths of my anger and hurt, a newfound sense of determination burned within me. I would not let them break me, not after everything they had put me through. My first stop was the storage unit where Joan had so carelessly stashed away my belongings. As I rifled through the haphazardly packed boxes, a wave of emotion washed over me. These weren't just material possessions. They were pieces of my life, memories and mementos that had been so callously discarded. Gently, I lifted out a faded photograph, its edges worn and creased from years of handling. It was a picture of my parents on their wedding day, beaming with joy and hope for the future that lay ahead of them. A lump formed in my throat as I traced the outline of their faces, my heart aching for the trust they had placed in Dennis, a trust he had so thoroughly shattered. Tucking the photograph safely into my bag, I continued my search, unearthing more treasures from the past. Old love letters from Dennis, souvenirs from our travels, even the tattered stuffed bear he had won for me at a carnival on our first date. Each item was a poignant reminder of the love we had once shared, a love that had been slowly poisoned by Joan's insidious influence and Dennis's own selfishness. But amidst the pain and heartache, a newfound sense of resolve took root within me. These mementos were not just reminders of what I had lost. They were proof of the life I had built, the sacrifices I had made, and the strength that had carried me through even the darkest of times. With a renewed sense of purpose, I began to gather the evidence I would need to expose Dennis and Joan's lies. Financial records, incriminating emails, anything that could shed light on the depth of their betrayal. As I pored over the documents, a clearer picture began to emerge, one of greed, manipulation, and utter disregard for the sanctity of our marriage. It was then that I knew what I had to do. I would not simply walk away and lick my wounds. No, I would fight back, rallying the support of those who had stood by me through thick and thin, those who had seen the truth of Dennis and Joan's actions long before I had been willing to open my eyes. One by one, I reached out to my closest friends and family members, laying bare the painful truth of what had transpired. And one by one, they rallied to my side, offering not just their sympathy, but their unwavering support and loyalty. I always knew there was something off about that woman, my oldest friend Beth spat, her eyes blazing with righteous fury. Just say the word, Maggie, and I'll make sure the whole town knows what kind of snakes they really are. Others echoed her sentiments, sharing their own stories of Joan's manipulative behavior and Dennis's increasingly erratic actions. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and suddenly the pieces all fell into place. I've been naive, yes, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. But underestimating me is their biggest mistake. As the days passed, my network of allies grew stronger, each person bringing their own unique perspective and insights to the table. Together we pieced together a damning portrait of Dennis and Joan's misdeeds, a tapestry of lies and deceit that would be impossible to ignore or refute. And through it all, a newfound sense of strength and resilience took root within me. I was no longer the meek, downtrodden woman who had allowed herself to be controlled and belittled for far too long. No, I was a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had reclaimed her power and her sense of self-worth. As I looked around at the faces of those who had rallied to my side, I felt a surge of gratitude and determination. This was no longer just about me. It was about standing up for what was right, about refusing to let the toxic influence of people like Joan and Dennis poison the lives of others. With a deep breath, I squared my shoulders and turned to face the battle ahead. It was time to take the fight to them, to expose their lies and their betrayal for all the world to see. And this time I would not be silenced or cowed. This time I would emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. As I stood before the gathered crowd of family and friends, a hush fell over the room, all eyes fixed on me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady despite the butterflies fluttering in my stomach. "I know there have been rumors circulating, whispers of discord within our family, and today I'm going to lay bare the truth, no matter how painful it may be." A murmur rippled through the crowd, but I pressed on, undeterred. For too long I've been a victim of manipulation and betrayal at the hands of those closest to me. My own husband, Dennis, and his mother, Joan, have conspired against me, trampling on the sanctity of our marriage and our family for their own selfish gains. Gasps of shock and disbelief echoed through the room, but I refused to falter. This was my moment, my chance to reclaim the dignity and respect that had been so cruelly stripped away from me. "It's true," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. "Dennis has been carrying on an affair with a younger woman, using my own inheritance to fund her business ventures behind my back." Turning to face my husband, I felt a surge of righteous anger coursing through my veins. "How could you, Dennis? How could you betray everything we built together, everything we sacrificed for this family?" He opened his mouth to speak, but I silenced him with a single, withering glare. "And you, Joan," I said, shifting my gaze to my mother-in-law's stony expression. You were supposed to be my ally, my support system. Instead, you enabled and encouraged Dennis's betrayal, driven by your own twisted, possessive love for your son. Joan's eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a familiar sneer. How dare you speak to me like that, you ungrateful little— Enough, I thundered, cutting her off mid-sentence. I've endured your insults, your belittling, for far too long, but no more. This house, this legacy, it isn't yours to destroy. It's my blood, sweat, and tears you've trampled on, all for your own selfish desires. A heavy silence hung in the air, the weight of my words sinking in for all to bear witness. I could see the shock and disbelief etched on the faces of those around me, the realization that the perfect family they had envied was nothing but a carefully constructed facade. I have proof, I continued, holding up the thick manila envelope that contained the damning evidence of Dennis and Joan's misdeeds. Financial records, emails, photographs, all of it documenting the depths of their betrayal. Slowly, I began to circulate the documents, allowing each person to see for themselves the ugly truth that had been hidden for so long. Whispers and gasps of outrage rippled through the crowd, and I knew in that moment that the tide had turned. Dennis stepped forward, his eyes pleading with me for forgiveness. Maggie, please, let me explain. But I cut him off with a sharp shake of my head. There's nothing to explain, Dennis. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences. Turning back to the crowd, I drew myself up to my full height, a newfound sense of strength and resolve coursing through my veins. This is not the end, I declared, my voice ringing out with conviction. This is just the beginning of a new chapter, one where I reclaim my dignity, my self-worth, and my rightful place in this family. A smattering of applause broke out, growing louder and more fervent as the weight of my words sank in. I could see the respect and admiration in their eyes, a stark contrast to the pity and condescension I had grown so accustomed to. In that moment, I knew that I had won. Not just a battle, but a war against the toxic influences that had sought to diminish and control me for far too long. As I looked around at the faces of those who had rallied to my side, I felt a surge of gratitude and pride. This was my family, my true family. The ones who had seen me at my lowest and still believed in me, still stood by my side. And as for Dennis and Joan, their downfall was inevitable, a consequence of their own selfish actions and misguided priorities. They had lost far more than just their reputations. They had lost the respect and loyalty of those who had once looked up to them. But I had gained something far more precious, my freedom, my self-respect, and the knowledge that I was truly loved and supported by those who mattered most. As I stepped down from the podium, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose and determination. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, unburdened by the chains of manipulation and deceit that had held me captive for far too long. This was my moment, my chance to start anew and rebuild my life on my own terms. And as I looked towards the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and possibility. After all, the best revenge is living well, and that's exactly what I intended to do. The aftermath of my public confrontation with Dennis and Joan was both exhilarating and exhausting. As I stepped out into the crisp evening air, I could feel the weight of years of pent-up anger and resentment finally lifting from my shoulders. Maggie, over here! I turned to see Beth waving me over, a broad grin splitting her face. She enveloped me in a fierce hug, her eyes shining with pride. You were incredible in there, she said, giving my arm a gentle squeeze. I've never seen you so strong, so confident. A small smile tugged at the corners of my mouth. I'll admit, it felt pretty damn good to finally stand up to those two. Beth nodded emphatically. You have no idea how long I've been waiting for you to see them for who they really are. That mother-son duo has been nothing but trouble from the start. Her words rang true, and I felt a pang of regret for all the years I had spent making excuses for their behavior, turning a blind eye to the toxicity that had slowly poisoned my life. Well, no more, I said firmly. That chapter of my life is over. It's time for me to start fresh, to rebuild on my own terms. Beth beamed at me, her expression a mixture of admiration and relief. I'm so proud of you, Maggie. You've come such a long way from the woman who used to let Joan walk all over her. I nodded, my mind drifting back to those dark days when Joan's constant belittling had left me feeling small and insignificant. But now, in the wake of my public triumph, I felt a newfound sense of strength and self-worth. I've learned that true family stands by you, not controls you, I said, squeezing Beth's hand gratefully, and I'll never let anyone walk over me again. As the weeks passed, I found myself reconnecting with old friends and family members who had rallied to my side during my darkest hours. Their support and encouragement buoyed me, reminding me that I was far from alone in this new chapter of my life. And as for Dennis and Joan, well, let's just say the aftermath of their exposed misdeeds was far from pretty. The once revered family name had been dragged through the mud, their reputations in tatters. I would catch glimpses of them around town, their expressions sullen and defeated, as if the weight of their own actions had finally caught up to them. But I refused to let their downfall consume me. Instead, I focused on rebuilding my life, one piece at a time. I reclaimed my cherished belongings from storage, carefully restoring the warmth and familiarity to the house that had once been my home. And slowly, steadily, I began to heal. Not just from the betrayal, but from years of emotional abuse and manipulation. It wasn't an easy journey, of course. There were moments when the pain and anger threatened to overwhelm me, when the temptation to wallow in bitterness was almost too strong to resist. But each time I would remind myself of how far I had come, of the strength and resilience that had carried me through the darkest of times. And as the months passed, something remarkable began to happen. The whispers and sideways glances that had once followed me gradually faded, replaced by nods of respect and admiration. It seemed that my public stand against Dennis and Joan had struck a chord with others who had suffered in silence, and my story had become a beacon of hope for those trapped in their own toxic situations. "It's good to see you back, Maggie," an old acquaintance remarked one day as I passed her in the grocery store. "Stronger than ever." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride and gratitude. "Thank you. It hasn't been easy, but I've learned that true strength comes from within, and from surrounding yourself with people who truly care about you." As I made my way home, my arms laden with bags of fresh produce and the promise of a new recipe to try, I couldn't help but marvel at how far I had come. The woman I was today was a far cry from the meek, downtrodden soul who had once allowed herself to be defined by the cruelty of others. No, I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had reclaimed her power and her sense of self-worth. And as I looked towards the future, I felt a sense of excitement and possibility that had been absent for far too long. This was my life, my story, and I was the author of my own destiny. The road ahead might be long and winding, but for the first time in years, I felt truly alive, unburdened by the weight of others' expectations and manipulations. As I stepped through the front door and into the warm embrace of my newly reclaimed home, I couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning, the first chapter in a story that promised to be filled with adventure, growth, and the kind of hard-won wisdom that can only come from surviving the darkest of storms. And I couldn't wait to see what the future had in store. I stood in the kitchen, my hands gripping the edge of the counter so tightly, my knuckles turned white. Michael's words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. "Lily, we need to talk about Mom," he said, his voice tinged with that familiar mix of guilt and determination. I turned to face him, my heart already sinking. "What about her?" Michael ran a hand through his graying hair. "Her house needs emergency repairs, the foundation's cracking, and it's not safe for her to stay there." "Okay," I said slowly, bracing myself for what I knew was coming next. "She needs to move in with us, just for a few months until the work's done." The words hit me like a physical blow. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Michael, we can't. You know how she is. She'll take over our lives." "She's my mother, Lily. What am I supposed to do? Let her live in a dangerous house?" I could feel the frustration building inside me. "There are other options. We could help her find a short-term rental, or—" "We can't afford that," Michael cut me off. "And she won't go for it anyway. She's family. This is what family does." I bit back a bitter laugh. Family. As if Martha had ever treated me like family in the 30 years I'd been married to her son. "Did you already tell her yes?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Michael's silence was confirmation enough. Of course you did, I said, my voice rising. Without even talking to me first. This is our home, Michael, our life. Don't I get a say? I'm sorry, Lily, he said, not sounding sorry at all. But it's done. She'll be here next week. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. Next week? Michael, that's not enough time to... To what? He snapped. To come up with more excuses? She's coming, Lily. End of discussion. I watched him storm out of the kitchen, leaving me alone with the weight of his decision crushing down on me. I sank into a chair at the table, my mind reeling. Martha, living here. The thought alone was enough to make me want to run screaming from the house. The phone rang, startling me out of my daze. I answered it without thinking. Hello, dear, came Martha's saccharine voice. I hear I'll be staying with you for a while. Won't that be lovely? I gritted my teeth. Hello, Martha. Yes, Michael just told me. Oh, good. I'm sure you'll make me feel right at home. You always were such a competent little homemaker. I could practically hear the sneer in her voice. I'll do my best, I managed to say. I'm sure you will, Martha said. Oh, and dear, I hope you don't mind, but I'll need to bring Fluffy with me. You know how attached she is to her special chair. I'm sure you can find somewhere else to sit in the evenings. Fluffy, Martha's ancient, ill-tempered cat that hated everyone but her, and her special chair was my favorite reading spot in the living room. Of course, I said, my free hand clenching into a fist. Whatever makes you comfortable. Wonderful. I knew you'd understand. See you next week, dear. The line went dead, and I let the phone drop from my hand. I stared at it, lying there on the table as the full reality of what was about to happen crashed over me. Martha was coming. She was going to invade my home, criticize my every move, and make my life a living hell. And Michael, the man who was supposed to be my partner, my protector, had invited her in without a second thought. I stood up, my legs shaky. I needed air. I needed space. I didn't know what I needed. But I knew one thing for certain. My life was about to change, and not for the better, and I had no idea how I was going to survive it. The day Martha moved in, our house transformed into a battleground. I'd spent the week preparing, scrubbing every surface until it gleamed, hoping to avoid her criticism. It didn't work. Oh, Lily, Martha said, wrinkling her nose as she stepped inside. You really should dust more often. I can see cobwebs in that corner. I bit my tongue, forcing a smile. I'll take care of it, Martha. Michael lugged in her suitcases, grunting with effort. Where do you want these, Mom? The guest room, of course, she said, as if it were obvious. Though I suppose we should start calling it my room now. I felt a twinge of panic. But that's my office. I need that space for work. Martha's eyes narrowed. Work? At your age? Shouldn't you be thinking about retirement, dear? I'm only 58, I protested, and I love my job. Well, I'm sure you can find somewhere else to play with your computer, Martha said dismissively. A grown woman shouldn't need a whole room for a hobby. I looked to Michael, silently pleading for support. He avoided my gaze. Mom's right, Lily, he said. You can set up your laptop in the living room or something. I felt like I'd been slapped. But it's settled then, Martha interrupted. Michael, be a dear and move my things in. Lily, why don't you make us some tea? I retreated to the kitchen, my hands shaking as I filled the kettle. This was only the beginning, and already I felt like a stranger in my own home. The next few days were a blur of snide comments and barely concealed insults. Martha criticized everything from my cooking to my clothes to the way I folded towels, and Michael, the man who once promised to stand by me through thick and thin, said nothing. One evening, I was working late on a project, my laptop balanced precariously on the arm of the sofa. Martha's cat, Fluffy, had claimed my favorite chair, hissing whenever I got too close. Still pecking away at that thing? Martha's voice made me jump. It's nearly 9 o'clock, you know. A wife should have dinner on the table by now. I gritted my teeth. Michael knows I have a deadline. He said he'd order pizza. Martha clicked her tongue disapprovingly. Take out food at your age? No wonder you're putting on weight. When I was your age. I'm not putting on weight, I snapped, my patience finally wearing thin. Now, Martha said, her voice dripping with false concern. There's no need to be defensive. I'm just looking out for your health. After all, you're not getting any younger, are you? And with no children to care for you in your old age? The barb about my childlessness hit home as she knew it would. I blinked back tears, refusing to let her see how much it hurt. I have work to do, I said, my voice tight. Of course you do, Martha sighed. It's a shame, really. If you'd focused more on being a proper wife and mother instead of chasing a career, things might have been different. Michael always wanted children, you know. I slammed my laptop shut, unable to take any more. I'm going to bed. As I stormed past her, Martha called out, "Oh, and Lily, do try to be quieter in the morning. Your stomping around wakes me up and I need my beauty sleep." I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, Michael snoring softly beside me. How had it come to this? How had I let myself become a doormat in my own home? Something had to change. I couldn't go on like this, swallowing my anger and hurt day after day. But what could I do? As I drifted off into an uneasy sleep, a plan began to form in my mind. If Martha and Michael wouldn't listen to my words, maybe they needed to hear them played back. Tomorrow, I decided, I would buy a voice recorder. It was time to gather evidence of the hell my life had become. Little did I know, that decision would set in motion a chain of events that would change everything. The tiny voice recorder felt like a lifeline in my hand. I'd bought it on my lunch break, heart pounding as I handed over the cash. Now, back home, I slipped it into my pocket, my fingers brushing against the smooth plastic for reassurance. "Lily, is that you?" Martha's voice rang out from the living room. "Come in here, we need to talk." I took a deep breath, pressed the record button, and stepped into the lion's den. Martha sat in my chair, Fluffy curled in her lap. Michael stood by the window, his back to me. "There you are," Martha said, her tone dripping with false sweetness. "Michael and I have been discussing your situation." I felt a chill run down my spine. My situation? Your work, dear. It's becoming a problem. I glanced at Michael, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. "What do you mean?" Martha sighed dramatically. "You're never home, always hunched over that computer. It's not healthy, and it's certainly not fair to Michael." "I'm providing for us," I said, my voice tight. "My job is important." "More important than your family?" Martha's eyes narrowed. "Michael tells me you haven't even started dinner yet. It's already 6 o'clock. I bit back a retort, acutely aware of the recorder in my pocket. "I was planning to cook after I finished my project." "See?" Martha turned to Michael. "This is exactly what I'm talking about. No wonder you two never had children. She's too busy playing career woman to be a proper wife." The words hit me like a physical blow. I looked to Michael, silently begging him to defend me. He cleared his throat. "Mom's right, Lily. Maybe it's time to think about cutting back at work. We could use the help around here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Michael, my job pays our mortgage. It's not some hobby I can just give up." "Don't be dramatic," Martha scoffed. "Michael makes plenty. You don't need to work. Unless..." She paused, her eyes glinting maliciously. "Unless you're planning to leave him. Is that it? Are you squirreling away money for a divorce?" "What?" "No," I sputtered, shocked by the accusation. Michael finally turned to face me, his expression a mix of hurt and anger. "Is that true, Lily? Are you planning to leave me?" I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of absurdity. "Of course not. How could you even think that?" "Well, what are we supposed to think?" Martha interjected. "You're always working, never home. You barely speak to Michael anymore. If you're not saving for a divorce, then what exactly are you doing?" I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. How had we gotten here? How had my hard work and dedication become twisted into something sinister? "I think," Martha said, her voice low and dangerous, "that it's time you made a choice, Lily. Your family or your precious career." Michael nodded, his face set in grim lines. "She's right, Lily. Something has to change." I stood there, frozen, as the weight of their words crashed over me. They were asking me to give up everything I'd worked for, to become the subservient housewife I'd never wanted to be. In that moment, something inside me snapped. A lifetime of swallowing my anger, of biting my tongue, of trying to please everyone but myself. It all came rushing to the surface. "No," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "What was that?" Martha leaned forward, her eyes glittering with triumph. I straightened my spine, looked her dead in the eye, and said, "No, I won't choose. I won't give up my career, and I won't let you bully me anymore." The room fell silent. Martha's mouth hung open in shock. Michael stared at me like he'd never seen me before. I turned on my heel and walked out, my heart pounding in my chest. As I climbed the stairs to what used to be my office, I could hear Martha's shrill voice behind me. "Michael, are you going to let her speak to me like that? Do something." But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. The recorder was still running in my pocket, capturing every word. This was just the beginning. The day of Ruth's 80th birthday arrived, and I felt sick to my stomach. I'd spent the past week avoiding Martha and Michael as much as possible, retreating to our bedroom with my laptop whenever I could. The voice recorder had become my constant companion, capturing every snide comment and heated argument. As we pulled up to Ruth's house, I plastered on a smile. "Ready?" I asked Michael. He grunted in response, barely looking at me. We'd hardly spoken since my outburst, the silence between us growing heavier by the day. Martha tottered out of the back seat, already unsteady on her feet. She'd started drinking in the car, claiming it was to calm her nerves. I bit my tongue, knowing any comment would only lead to another fight. Ruth greeted us at the door, her face lighting up when she saw me. "Lily, dear, so good to see you." She pulled me into a warm hug, then turned to Michael and Martha with a noticeably cooler demeanor. "Hello, you two." I felt a small surge of satisfaction at Ruth's obvious preference for me. At least someone in this family was on my side. The party was in full swing, the backyard filled with friends and relatives. I mingled, grateful for the chance to talk to people who didn't constantly belittle me. But I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in my stomach. That feeling proved justified when Martha clinked her glass, demanding everyone's attention. "I'd like to make a toast," she slurred, her eyes unfocused, "to my darling son, Michael, and his wife." I tensed, sensing trouble. "Michael," Martha continued, her voice growing louder, "you've always been such a good boy, so patient, even when you married beneath you." A hush fell over the crowd. I felt all eyes turn to me, my cheeks burning with humiliation. "Mom," Michael said weakly, "maybe we should sit down." But Martha was on a roll. No, I need to say this. Lily here, she thinks she's so smart with her fancy job, but what kind of wife is she? Can't even give you children, can't even cook a decent meal." I stood frozen, unable to believe this was happening. Where was my voice recorder? I needed proof of this moment, this public humiliation. "And now," Martha went on, swaying slightly, "now she's trying to turn you against me. Your own mother." "Well, I won't stand for it. It's time you put her in her place, Michael. Tell her who's really important in this family." I turned to Michael, silently pleading with him to stop this, to defend me. But to my horror, he nodded. "You're right, Mom," he said, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent yard. "Lily's been selfish. She needs to learn her place." The world seemed to tilt around me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could feel was the weight of dozens of pitying stares. Ruth's voice cut through the fog. "That's quite enough," she said sharply. "Martha, Michael, you should be ashamed of yourselves." But the damage was done. I turned and ran, tears blurring my vision. I found myself in Ruth's guest bathroom, locking the door behind me. As I splashed cold water on my face, I caught sight of my reflection in the mirror. Who was this woman staring back at me? This broken, humiliated shell of a person? No, I wouldn't let them do this to me. I wouldn't let them reduce me to nothing. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and the voice recorder. I had weeks of evidence, weeks of abuse and gaslighting and manipulation. It was time to use it. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I was about to do. This would change everything. There would be no going back. But as I replayed Martha's drunken tirade in my mind, as I remembered Michael's betrayal, I knew I had no choice. It was time to fight back. I unlocked the bathroom door, my head held high. Let them think they'd broken me. Let them think they'd won. They had no idea what was coming. I emerged from the bathroom, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. The party had resumed its uneasy chatter, but I could feel the weight of curious glances. Martha's drunken tirade had left a palpable tension in the air. Ruth approached me, concern etched on her face. "Lily, dear, are you all right?" I managed a tight smile. "I will be, Ruth. Thank you." She squeezed my hand. "I'm so sorry about Martha and Michael. Their behavior is inexcusable." "You're right," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "and I'm not going to excuse it anymore." Ruth's eyes widened as I strode purposefully towards the center of the gathering. I caught sight of Michael and Martha huddled together near the punch bowl. They both looked up as I approached, Martha's face twisting into a sneer. "Well, look who decided to grace us with her presence again," she slurred. "Come to apologize for ruining the party?" I didn't respond. Instead, I pulled out my phone and the voice recorder, connecting them with shaking hands. "What are you doing?" Michael asked, his brow furrowed. "Something I should have done a long time ago," I replied. Before they could stop me, I pressed play. Martha's voice, shrill and cruel, filled the air. "You're a disgrace, Lily. A barren, useless woman. Michael deserves better than you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I watched as shock and horror dawned on the faces around me. Michael lunged forward, trying to grab the recorder. "Turn that off!" But I danced out of his reach, letting the recordings continue. His own voice joined his mother's, agreeing with her insults, laughing at her cruel jokes. "You see," I said, my voice rising above the cacophony of recorded abuse. "This is what I've been living with. This is what they're really like behind closed doors." Martha's face had gone pale. You've been spying on us?" "No," I retorted. "I've been protecting myself, gathering evidence of the emotional abuse you've subjected me to for years." The recordings kept playing, a litany of insults and degradation that seemed to go on forever. I watched as disgust and anger replaced the pity in the eyes of our friends and family. Finally, Ruth stepped forward, her face a mask of fury. "That's enough," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "Martha, Michael, I want you both out of my house. Now." "But Mom," Michael protested weakly. "No buts," Ruth snapped. "I've heard enough. What you've done to Lily is despicable. I'm ashamed to call you my son." As security escorted a protesting Martha and a shell-shocked Michael out, I felt a strange mix of vindication and exhaustion wash over me. The nightmare was finally over, but at what cost? Ruth approached me, tears in her eyes. "Lily, I had no idea. I'm so sorry you've had to endure this." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "What will you do now?" she asked gently. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I looked around at the faces of our friends and family, some supportive, others uncomfortable. I thought about the house I'd returned to, now tainted by months of abuse and betrayal. In that moment, I knew I couldn't go back. Couldn't pretend things could ever be the same. "I don't know," I admitted. "But I know I can't stay with Michael. Not after this." Ruth nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Whatever you decide, you have my support. Your family, Lily, the kind of family I'm proud to have." As the party slowly dispersed, I stood alone in Ruth's backyard, watching the sun set on the life I'd known. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with legal battles and emotional turmoil. But for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. I'd found my voice, my strength. And I knew whatever came next, I would face it on my own terms. The recorder sat heavy in my hand, a testament to my resilience and a key to my freedom. Tomorrow, I decided I would call a divorce lawyer. It was time to start my new life. The days following Ruth's birthday party were a whirlwind. I'd moved out of our house, staying with a sympathetic coworker while I sorted out my next steps. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from Michael, alternating between angry accusations and desperate pleas for forgiveness. I ignored them all. Today, I sat in my lawyer's office, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. The recordings I'd made were spread out on the desk between us, along with financial documents and other evidence of Michael and Martha's mistreatment. "This is strong stuff, Lily," Sarah, my lawyer, said. "With this evidence, we have a solid case for emotional abuse and grounds for divorce." I nodded, a mix of relief and anxiety churning in my stomach. "What's our next step?" "We file for divorce and—" Sarah was cut off by a commotion outside her office. The door burst open, and Michael stormed in, his face red with anger. Martha trailed behind him, her eyes darting around the room. "How dare you?" Michael shouted, slamming his hands on the desk. "You think you can just walk away and destroy our family?" I flinched but held my ground. "There's nothing left to destroy, Michael. You and Martha took care of that." Sarah stood, her voice stern. "Mr. Thompson, you need to leave. This is a private meeting." Michael ignored her, his gaze fixed on me. "You manipulative bitch. Those recordings? They're out of context. You've turned everyone against us." "The recordings speak for themselves," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Everyone heard the truth." Martha stepped forward, her face a mask of false concern. "Lily dear, we're worried about you. You're not thinking clearly. Come home and we can work this out as a family." I almost laughed at the absurdity. "Family? You've never treated me like family. You've both made it clear that I'm nothing but a nuisance, a failure as a wife and woman." "That's not true," Michael protested, but his words rang hollow. Sarah moved towards the door. "I'm calling security. You need to leave now." As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Michael's face contorted with rage. "You'll regret this," he snarled. "I'll make sure you walk away with nothing. You hear me? Nothing." As the guards escorted Michael and Martha out, I felt my resolve wavering. Was I really prepared for the battle ahead? Sarah returned to her seat, her expression grim. "I'm sorry about that, Lily, but their behavior only strengthens our case." I nodded, trying to steady my breathing. "What did Michael mean about me walking away with nothing?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Let's take a closer look at those financial documents." As we pored over bank statements and investment records, a sickening realization dawned on me. Large sums of money had been moving out of our joint accounts for months, funneled into accounts I didn't recognize. "He's been hiding assets," Sarah said, her voice tight with anger. "Preparing for this, most likely." I felt the room spin around me. All those years of hard work, saving, planning for our future, and Michael had been systematically dismantling it behind my back. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah's expression was determined. "We fight. We'll need forensic accountants, maybe even private investigators. It won't be easy, Lily, but we can prove what he's done." I closed my eyes, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what lay ahead. The divorce, the financial battle, the inevitable smear campaign Michael and Martha would wage against me. It all seemed insurmountable. For a moment I considered giving up. Maybe it would be easier to crawl back, to accept Michael's version of events, to return to the life I knew, no matter how miserable. But then I thought of the recordings, of the years of abuse and gaslighting. I thought of Ruth's support, of the shocked faces at the party when they heard the truth. I couldn't go back. Not now, not ever. I opened my eyes, meeting Sarah's gaze. "Okay," I said, my voice growing stronger. "Let's do this. Whatever it takes, I'm ready." As Sarah began outlining our strategy, I felt a strange mix of terror and exhilaration. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in years, I was fighting for myself, and I was determined to win. The courtroom buzzed with tension as I took my seat beside Sarah. Across the aisle, Michael and Martha sat with their lawyer, both of them glaring daggers at me. I forced myself to look straight ahead, focusing on the judge's empty chair. This was it. The culmination of months of legal battles, financial investigations, and emotional turmoil. Everything I'd fought for hung in the balance. As the judge entered and the proceedings began, I found myself reliving the journey that had brought me here. The recordings that had exposed the truth, the shocking discovery of Michael's hidden assets, the grueling depositions where I'd had to relive every moment of abuse and betrayal. Sarah squeezed my hand reassuringly as she stood to present our case. Her voice was clear and confident as she laid out the evidence of emotional abuse, financial deception, and the systematic effort to undermine my self-worth and independence. "Your Honor," Sarah said, "the recordings you're about to hear demonstrate a clear pattern of emotional abuse perpetrated by both Mr. Thompson and his mother against my client." As the first recording played, I watched the judge's expression change from neutral to disturbed. Martha's shrill voice filled the courtroom, spewing vitriol about my supposed failings as a wife. Michael's voice chimed in, agreeing and adding his own cruel comments. I risked a glance at Michael and Martha. Martha's face was red with anger, while Michael looked pale and sick. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Their lawyer tried to argue that the recordings were taken out of context, that they were private family matters not meant for public consumption. But the judge wasn't buying it. "Context or not," the judge said sternly, "this behavior is unacceptable." As the financial evidence was presented detailing Michael's elaborate scheme to hide assets, I saw his shoulders slump. He knew he was caught. Just when I thought it was all over, Martha suddenly stood up, her voice shrill and desperate. "This is all a lie. Lily's the abusive one. She manipulated Michael, turned him against me. She's trying to steal everything we have." The judge called for order, but Martha was beyond reason. She pointed at me, her face me, her face contorted with rage. "You ungrateful whore, after everything we've done for you." In that moment, something inside me snapped. All the fear, all the self-doubt, all the years of swallowing my anger, it all came rushing out. I stood, my voice ringing clear and strong. "No, Martha, you've done nothing for me except try to break me down. You and Michael both. But I'm not broken. I'm stronger than I've ever been." The courtroom fell silent. I could feel all eyes on me, but for once I didn't shrink from the attention. "I'm not here to steal anything," I continued. "I'm here to reclaim my life, my dignity, and the future you tried to take from me. And no matter what happens today, I've already won, because I'm free of you both." Martha sputtered incoherently, but Michael just stared at me, a mix of shock and something that looked almost like admiration on his face. The judge called for a recess, and as the courtroom emptied, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. Whatever the outcome, I knew I'd done the right thing. As we waited to be called back in, Sarah turned to me, her eyes shining with pride. "That was incredible, Lily. You've come so far." I nodded, surprising myself with a small smile. "I have, haven't I?" Just then, a court officer approached us. "The judge would like to see both parties in chambers," he said. My heart raced as we followed him. This was it, the moment of truth. As we entered the judge's chambers, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever came next. Win or lose, I was ready to face my future on my own terms. The judge's chambers felt suffocating as we all gathered around her desk. Michael and Martha stood on one side, their lawyer whispering urgently to them. Sarah and I stood on the other, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. Judge Hawkins looked at each of us in turn, her expression unreadable. "I've heard enough," she said finally. "And frankly, I'm appalled by what I've seen and heard today." She turned to Michael and Martha. "Your behavior has been reprehensible. The emotional abuse, the financial deception, it's all grounds for a fault divorce." Michael's face fell, while Martha looked like she might explode. But the judge wasn't finished. "Mr. Thompson, your attempts to hide assets are particularly troubling. I'm inclined to award Mrs. Thompson not just half of the marital assets, but punitive damages as well." I felt a surge of vindication, but it was tempered by a strange sadness. This was really the end of my marriage, of the life I'd known for so long. The judge turned to me. "Mrs. Thompson, I commend your bravery in coming forward. It's clear you've been through a terrible ordeal." "Thank you, Your Honor," I managed to say. "However," she continued, "I'm concerned about the recordings. While they've proven invaluable as evidence, they were obtained without consent. In light of the circumstances, I'm choosing not to pursue any legal action regarding them, but I want to be clear that this is not something I condone." I nodded, understanding the fine line I'd walked. "Now," the judge said, "I have a proposal for you all. We can continue this trial, air all your dirty laundry in public, and I'll make my ruling. Or you can agree to mediation right now and settle this privately." There was a moment of tense silence. Then, to my surprise, Michael spoke up. "I'll agree to mediation," he said quietly. When Martha started to protest, he silenced her with a look. "It's over, Mom. We've lost." The next few hours were a blur of negotiations. In the end, we reached an agreement that left me with more than half of our assets, including the house. Michael would pay alimony, and Martha would have no contact with me. As we left the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and an overwhelming sense of freedom. Ruth was waiting outside, her face anxious. When she saw me, she rushed over and enveloped me in a hug. "Oh, Lily," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I'm so proud of you." As we pulled apart, I saw Michael and Martha exiting the building. Martha stormed off without a word, but Michael hesitated, then approached us. "Lily," he said, his voice low, I'm sorry for everything." I looked at him, this man I'd loved for so long, and felt a complex mix of anger, pity, and something like forgiveness. "I hope you find peace, Michael," I said finally, "and I hope you learn from this." He nodded, then walked away. I watched him go, feeling the last threads of our life together finally snap. Ruth squeezed my hand. "What now, dear?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the past few months finally lifting. "Now, I start living for myself." In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I redecorated the house, erasing all traces of Martha's presence. I reconnected with old friends and made new ones. I even started taking art classes. something I'd always wanted to do, but never had the courage to try. Ruth and I grew closer. Our bond strengthened by the trials we'd faced together. She became the mother figure I'd always longed for, supportive and loving without being overbearing. One evening, as we sat on my porch watching the sunset, Ruth turned to me with a smile. "You know, Lily, I always knew you had this strength in you. I'm just glad you finally see it too." I smiled back, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. "Me too, Ruth. Me too." As the sky turned from gold to purple, I reflected on my journey. I'd lost a husband and a life I thought I wanted, but I'd gained something far more valuable, myself. At 58, I was starting a new chapter, one filled with possibilities I'd never dared to imagine before. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited for what the future might hold. "Mom, oh no, this can't be." Grace's voice cuts through the quiet evening, jolting me from my thoughts as I prepare dinner in the kitchen. My heart races as I rush to the living room, fearing the worst. "Grace, honey, what's wrong?" I ask, my voice trembling slightly. I find my 10-year-old daughter standing by the lamp, her face pale and her eyes wide with fear. "There's something weird in the lamp, Mom," she whispers, pointing at the base of the lamp with a shaky finger. I approach the lamp cautiously, my mind spinning with possibilities. As I examine the base, I notice a small, unfamiliar device attached to it. A chill runs down my spine as realization dawns on me. "Is that a wiretap?" I mutter under my breath, my heart sinking. Grace looks up at me, her eyes filled with confusion and fear. "What's a wiretap, Mom?" I take a deep breath, trying to compose myself for my daughter's sake. "It's something that people use to listen to other people's conversations without them knowing," I explain gently, pulling her into a reassuring hug. As I hold Grace close, my mind races with questions. Who would do this to us? Why would someone invade our privacy like this? A sense of violation and anger begins to build inside me, but I push it down, focusing on comforting my daughter. "Don't worry, sweetie," I say, stroking her hair. "We'll figure this out. I won't let anyone hurt our family." Grace nods, burying her face in my shoulder. "I'm scared, Mom," she whispers, her voice muffled. "I know, honey, but we'll get through this together. I promise." I hold her tightly, my determination growing with each passing moment. As I stand there, holding my daughter in the living room, I can't help but feel a sense of dread wash over me. The realization that someone has been listening to our private conversations, invading our most intimate moments, makes my skin crawl. I think back to the strained relationship I've had with my mother-in-law, Frances, over the years. The constant meddling, the subtle jabs at my parenting, the way she always seems to undermine my authority in my own home. Could she be behind this? The thought makes my stomach churn. I glance around the room, suddenly feeling exposed and vulnerable. How long has this been going on? What have they heard? The questions swirl in my mind, each one more unsettling than the last. But I know I can't let my fear consume me. I have to be strong for Grace, for our family. I take a deep breath, squaring my shoulders as I gently pull away from my daughter's embrace. "Okay, Grace, here's what we're going to do," I say, my voice steady and calm. "We're going to call the police and report this. They'll help us figure out who did this and keep us safe." Grace nods, her eyes still wide with fear but a glimmer of trust shining through. "Okay, Mom, I trust you." Those 3 simple words fill me with a renewed sense of purpose. I will protect my family, no matter what it takes. I won't let anyone tear us apart or destroy the love and trust we've built. As I reach for the phone to dial 911, I feel a wave of determination wash over me. This is just the beginning, I know. But I'm ready to face whatever comes our way, armed with the love and strength of my family by my side. As I wait for the police to arrive, my mind drifts back to the countless times Frances has meddled in our lives. Her obsession with Doris has always been a point of contention, but I never imagined it would lead to something like this. I remember the day we moved into this house, how excited we were to start our new life together. But Frances was there, her disapproving gaze sweeping over every inch of our home. "Doris, dear, are you sure this is the best you can do?" she had said, her voice dripping with condescension. Over the years, her interference only grew worse. She would drop by unannounced, criticizing my cooking, my parenting, even the way I decorated our home. I tried to maintain peace for Doris's sake, but it was a constant struggle. One particular incident stands out in my mind. It was Grace's 5th birthday, and we had invited some of her friends over for a small party. Frances had insisted on being there, despite my reservations. As the children played in the backyard, I overheard Frances talking to one of the other mothers. "Beth just doesn't have what it takes to be a proper mother," she said, her voice loud enough for me to hear. Poor Doris, having to put up with her inadequacies. I felt my face flush with anger and embarrassment. How dare she speak about me like that, in my own home? I wanted to confront her, but I knew it would only make things worse. Instead, I focused on making sure Grace had a wonderful birthday. I pushed down my own hurt and frustration, determined not to let Frances ruin this special day for my daughter. But now, as I sit here waiting for the police, I realize that Frances's meddling has gone too far. The wiretaps, the invasion of our privacy. It's unforgivable. I hear a knock at the door and take a deep breath, steeling myself for what's to come. As I open the door, I'm relieved to see 2 officers standing there, their faces serious but kind. "Mrs. Thompson?" one of them asks, and I nod. "We received a call about a possible wiretapping situation. Can you tell us what happened?" I invite them in and begin to explain, my voice shaking slightly as I recount the events of the evening. They listen intently, taking notes and asking questions. As I talk, I can't help but feel a sense of betrayal wash over me. How could Frances do this to us, to her own son and granddaughter? The thought makes my stomach churn. The officers assure me that they will investigate the matter thoroughly. They take the wiretap as evidence and promise to keep me updated on their progress. After they leave, I sit down heavily on the couch, my head in my hands. I feel like I'm in a nightmare, one that I can't seem to wake up from. Grace comes over and sits beside me, her small hand resting on my arm. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" she asks, her voice small and uncertain. I look at her, my brave, beautiful daughter, and I know that I have to be strong for her. "Yes, honey, we're going to be okay," I say, pulling her into a tight hug. "I promise." But even as I say the words, I know that things will never be the same. France's actions have set something in motion, something that I fear will tear our family apart. As I hold Grace close, I vow to myself that I will do whatever it takes to protect her, to keep her safe from the toxicity that threatens to engulf us. No matter what happens, I will always be there for her, my love for her unwavering and unbreakable. The days following the discovery of the wiretap are a blur of police interviews and hushed conversations with Doris. We try to shield Grace from the worst of it, but I can see the confusion and fear in her eyes. One evening, as we're sitting around the dinner table, Doris clears his throat and looks at me, his expression serious. "Beth, I think we need to talk about my mother." I feel my stomach clench at the mention of Frances. "What about her?" I ask, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think we need to limit our visits to her house for a while," he says, his eyes searching mine for a reaction. "At least until this whole wiretapping situation is resolved." I nod, relief washing over me. "I think that's a good idea," I say, reaching out to take his hand. "We need to focus on our own family right now." Grace looks up from her plate, her brow furrowed. "Does that mean we won't see Grandma anymore?" she asks, her voice small. I exchange a glance with Doris before turning to our daughter. "We'll still see Grandma, sweetie," I say, trying to reassure her. "Just not as often as before." Grace nods, but I can see the uncertainty in her eyes. My heart aches for her, for the innocence that's being stripped away by Frances's actions. The next day, I'm in the kitchen making lunch when the phone rings. I answer it, expecting it to be the police with an update on the investigation. Instead, I hear Frances's voice on the other end of the line. "Beth, dear, how are you?" she asks, her tone saccharine sweet. I feel my jaw clench at the sound of her voice. "What do you want, Frances?" I ask, not bothering to hide the anger in my voice. "I just wanted to check in on my favorite daughter-in-law," she says, her words dripping with false sincerity. "I heard about the little incident with the wiretap. Such a shame." I grip the phone tighter, my knuckles turning white. "A shame?" I repeat, my voice rising. "Is that all you have to say about it?" Now, Beth, there's no need to get upset," Frances says, her tone condescending. "I'm sure it was just a misunderstanding." I feel my blood boil at her words. "A misunderstanding?" I say, my voice shaking with anger. "Someone invaded our privacy. Francis, they listen to our conversations, our private moments, and you think it's just a misunderstanding? There's a pause on the other end of the line. Beth, dear, you're overreacting, Francis says, her voice cold. I'm sure whoever did this had their reasons. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Their reasons? I repeat, my voice rising to a shout. What possible reason could anyone have for doing something like this? Perhaps they were concerned about your ability to be a good mother, Francis says, her words like a slap in the face. Perhaps they wanted to make sure Grace was being properly cared for. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. How dare she question my ability to be a mother? How dare she use my daughter as a weapon against me? I am a damn good mother, Francis, I say, my voice low and dangerous, and I will not let you or anyone else tell me otherwise. I hang up the phone before she can respond, my hands shaking with rage. I lean against the counter, taking deep breaths to try and calm myself. Doris comes into the kitchen, his face etched with concern. Beth, what's wrong? He asks, coming over to wrap his arms around me. I bury my face in his chest, tears streaming down my cheeks. Your mother, I say, my voice muffled. She had the nerve to question my ability to be a good mother. I feel Doris stiffen against me. She what? He says, his voice low and angry. I pull back to look at him, my eyes red and puffy. She implied that whoever put the wiretap in our house did it because they were concerned about Grace's well-being, I say, my voice breaking. Doris's face hardens, his jaw clenching. That's it, he says, his voice firm. We need to distance ourselves from her, Beth, for our own sanity. I nod, relief and gratitude washing over me. Thank you, I whisper, burying my face in his chest once more. As we stand there, holding each other in the kitchen, I know that we've reached a turning point. We can no longer allow Francis to control our lives, to dictate our happiness. It's time to take a stand, to protect our family from her toxic influence. No matter what it takes, we will find a way to break free from her grasp and build a life of our own, one filled with love, trust, and respect. In the weeks following our decision to distance ourselves from Francis, I find myself constantly on edge, jumping at every unexpected sound or movement. The police investigation into the wiretapping is ongoing, but they haven't made any significant breakthroughs yet. One afternoon, as I'm cleaning the house, I decide to rearrange the furniture in the bedroom. As I'm moving the bed, I notice something strange behind the headboard. My heart races as I reach out and pull out another wiretap, similar to the one we found in the living room. I feel my stomach drop as I realize the extent of the invasion. How many more of these devices are hidden throughout our home? Who has been listening to our most intimate conversations? With shaking hands, I call Doris at work. Doris, I found another one, I say, my voice trembling. In our bedroom. There's a pause on the other end of the line. I'll be right there, he says, his voice tight with anger. When Doris arrives home, we search the house from top to bottom, finding wiretaps in almost every room. The kitchen, the bathroom, even Grace's bedroom. I feel sick to my stomach as I imagine someone listening to my daughter's private moments. We call the police, who arrive quickly and begin a thorough investigation. They dust for fingerprints and take the wiretaps as evidence, promising to do everything they can to find the person responsible. As the officers leave, I turn to Doris, my eyes filled with tears. I can't stay here, I say, my voice breaking. I don't feel safe. Doris nods, his face etched with concern. I understand, he says, pulling me into a tight hug. We'll figure something out. We decide to send Grace to stay with my parents in a nearby town while we deal with the investigation. It breaks my heart to be separated from her, but I know it's for the best. I need to keep her safe, no matter what. As I pack Grace's bags, I can't shake the feeling that someone is watching me. I glance out the window, half expecting to see Francis's face peering back at me. But there's no one there, just the quiet street and the setting sun. I drive Grace to my parents' house, my heart heavy with worry and fear. When we arrive, my mother takes one look at my face and pulls me into a tight hug. "Oh, Beth," she says, her voice filled with concern. "What's happened?" I break down then, sobbing into her shoulder as I tell her everything. The wiretaps, the police investigation, the constant fear that someone is watching our every move. My mother listens patiently, her face growing more and more concerned with each passing moment. When I finish, she takes my hand in hers and looks me in the eye. Beth, you're doing the right thing, she says, her voice firm. You need to protect yourself in grace, and we'll be here for you, no matter what. I nod, feeling a sense of relief wash over me. Knowing that I have my parents' support means everything to me. As I drive back home, my mind races with possibilities. Who could be behind the wiretapping? Is it Francis, trying to gather evidence to use against me? Or is it someone else entirely, someone with a grudge against our family? I think back to the confrontation with Francis, the way she questioned my ability to be a good mother. Could she really be capable of something like this? The thought makes my blood run cold. When I arrive home, Doris is waiting for me in the living room. He looks up as I enter, his face drawn and tired. Beth, we need to talk, he says, his voice serious. I think I know who's behind the wiretapping. I feel my heart skip a beat as I sit down beside him. Who? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Doris takes a deep breath, his eyes meeting mine. It's my mother, he says, his voice heavy with emotion. I think she's been spying on us, trying to find a way to tear our family apart. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. Francis, the woman who has made my life a living hell for years, is behind this invasion of our privacy. The betrayal cuts deep, leaving me reeling with shock and anger. As I sit there, trying to process this new information, I feel a sense of determination wash over me. I won't let Francis win. I won't let her destroy our family. No matter what it takes, I will protect Grace and Doris from her toxic influence. Even if it means cutting her out of our lives completely, I will do whatever it takes to keep my family safe and whole. The revelation of Francis's involvement in the wiretapping leaves me reeling. I can't believe that my own mother-in-law would go to such lengths to undermine our family. The betrayal cuts deep, leaving me feeling lost and alone. I decide to confide in my father, Paul, hoping that his wisdom and support will help me navigate this difficult situation. When I arrive at his house, he takes one look at my face and pulls me into a tight hug. What's wrong, Beth? He asks, his voice filled with concern. I break down then, telling him everything. The wiretaps, the police investigation, and Doris's suspicion that Francis is behind it all. My father listens intently, his face growing more and more serious with each passing moment. When I finish, he takes a deep breath and looks me in the eye. Beth, I know this is hard, but you need to stay strong, he says, his voice firm. You have to protect yourself and Grace, no matter what. I nod, feeling a sense of determination wash over me. I know, Dad, but I don't know what to do. I feel like I can't trust anyone anymore. My father takes my hand in his eyes filled with compassion. You can trust me, Beth. I'll always be here for you, no matter what. We decide to return to my house together, hoping to find some clues that might help us uncover the truth. When we arrive, the house is quiet and still, with no sign of Doris or Grace. As we make our way through the rooms, I can't shake the feeling that something is off. The air feels heavy with tension, and I find myself jumping at every unexpected sound. Suddenly, I hear a noise coming from the bedroom. My heart races as I push open the door, my father close behind me. There, crouched by the bed, is Doris. He looks up at us, his face pale and his eyes wide with fear. Doris, what are you doing? I ask, my voice shaking. He stands up slowly, his hands trembling. Beth, I can explain, he says, his voice barely above a whisper. I look down at his hands and see that he's holding one of the wiretaps. My stomach drops as I realize what's happening. Doris, you set this up with your mother? I ask, my voice rising with anger. He shakes his head frantically. No, Beth, I swear. I found it here, just now. I was going to remove it. I feel my father's hand on my shoulder, steadying me. Doris, I think you need to tell us the truth, he says, his voice calm but firm. Doris takes a deep breath, his eyes filling with tears. It was my mother, he says, his voice breaking. She convinced me that Beth was cheating on me, that she was an unfit mother. She said she had proof. I feel like I've been punched in the gut. And you believed her? I ask, my voice barely above a whisper. Doris nods, his face etched with shame. I'm so sorry, Beth. I never should have doubted you. I let my mother's lies cloud my judgment. I turn away from him, my heart breaking into a million pieces. The betrayal is too much to bear, the pain too deep to ignore. My father steps forward, his face hard with anger. Doris, I think you need to leave, he says, his voice leaving no room for argument. Doris nods, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I understand, he he says, his voice heavy with regret. I'll go. As he walks out of the room, I feel a sense of numbness wash over me. I can't believe that the man I loved, the father of my child, could betray me like this. My father pulls me into a tight hug, his voice soft and comforting. Beth, I know this hurts, but you're not alone. We'll get through this together. I nod, feeling a sense of strength wash over me. I know that the road ahead will be difficult, but with my father by my side, I know I can face anything. As we stand there, holding each other in the quiet of the bedroom, I feel a sense of determination wash over me. I won't let Frances win. I won't let her destroy my family. No matter what it takes, I will protect Grace from her toxic influence. Even if it means leaving Doris behind, I will do whatever it takes to keep my daughter safe and happy. The days following Doris's confession are a blur of anger, heartbreak, and disbelief. I can't fathom how he could have believed his mother's lies, how he could have doubted my love and loyalty. I find myself constantly replaying our confrontation in my mind, the look of guilt and shame on his face as he admitted to his betrayal. The pain is almost too much to bear, but I know I have to stay strong for Grace. One evening, as I'm putting Grace to bed, Doris comes into the room, his eyes red and puffy from crying. Beth, can we talk? He asks, his voice barely above a whisper. I nod, tucking Grace in and kissing her forehead before following Doris out of the room. We sit down on the couch, the tension between us palpable. Beth, I'm so sorry, Doris begins, his voice breaking. I never should have believed my mother's lies. I never should have doubted you. I feel my anger rising, my voice shaking as I respond. How could you, Doris? How could you think I would ever be unfaithful to you? How could you let your mother manipulate you like that? Doris hangs his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I don't know, Beth. I was weak. I let her get inside my head, and I didn't trust my own instincts. I shake my head, tears streaming down my face. Do you have any idea how much this hurts, Doris? How betrayed I feel? He nods, his own tears falling. I know, Beth. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'll never forgive myself for that. We sit in silence for a moment, the weight of his betrayal hanging heavy in the air. Finally, I take a deep breath and look him in the eye. I need to know everything, Doris. What exactly did your mother tell you? What made you believe her? Doris takes a shaky breath, his voice barely audible. She told me that the neighbors had seen you with another man, that they had proof of your infidelity. She said that you were an unfit mother, that you were neglecting Grace. I feel my heart shatter into a million pieces. And you believed her? Without even talking to me first? Doris nods, his face etched with shame. I'm so sorry, Beth. I was a fool. I let my mother's words poison my mind, and I didn't trust in our love. I stand up, my body shaking with anger and hurt. I can't do this anymore, Doris. I can't live with someone who doesn't trust me, who lets his mother control our lives. Doris stands up, his eyes wide with panic. Beth, please, I'll do anything to make this right. I'll cut my mother out of our lives completely. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I shake my head, my voice firm. It's too late, Doris. The damage has been done. I need to protect myself and Grace from this toxic environment. I walk towards the door, my heart breaking with every step. I'm taking Grace, and we're going to stay with my parents for a while. I need time to think, to figure out what's best for us. Doris falls to his knees, his voice desperate. Beth, please don't go. I love you. I can't live without you and Grace. I turn to face him, my eyes hard. You should have thought of that before you let your mother destroy our family. With that, I walk out the door. My heart shattered, but my resolve strong. I know that the road ahead will be difficult, but I also know that I'm doing what's best for myself and my daughter. As I drive to my parents' house, Grace sleeping peacefully in the back seat, I feel a sense of clarity wash over me. I know that I deserve better than a husband who doesn't trust me, who lets his mother control our lives. I vow to myself that I will build a new life for Grace and me, one filled with love, trust, and respect. No matter what it takes, I will protect my daughter from the toxicity that threatens to engulf us. And as for Frances, I know that she will face the consequences of her actions. I will make sure that the truth comes out, that everyone knows the extent of her manipulation and deceit. But for now, I focus on the road ahead, on the promise of a brighter future for Grace and me. I know that we will emerge from this stronger, more resilient than ever before. Settling into life at my parents' house is a challenge, but their unwavering support and love make it easier to bear. Grace seems to be adjusting well, finding comfort in the familiar surroundings and the doting attention of her grandparents. As the days pass, I find myself growing stronger, more determined to uncover the truth behind France's manipulation. With my father's encouragement, I decide to confront the neighbors who were allegedly spreading rumors about my infidelity. Armed with a newfound sense of purpose, I make my way to the first neighbor's house, my father by my side. When Mrs. Johnson opens the door, her face falls as she sees me standing there. "Beth, I'm so sorry," she begins, her voice trembling. "I never meant to cause you any harm." I take a deep breath, trying to keep my anger in check. "Mrs. Johnson, I need to know the truth. Did Frances tell you that I was cheating on Doris?" She nods, her eyes filling with tears. "She did. She said that she had proof that she had seen you with another man." I feel my heart sink, the weight of Frances's lies crushing me. "And you believed her? Without even asking me first?" Mrs. Johnson hangs her head in shame. "I'm so sorry, Beth. I should have known better. Frances can be so convincing, and I let myself get caught up in the gossip." I nod, my anger slowly giving way to a sense of betrayal. "Do you have any idea how much damage your words have caused, how much pain you've inflicted on my family?" She shakes her head, tears streaming down her face. "I'm truly sorry, Beth. I never meant to hurt you. I'll do whatever I can to make this right." My father places a comforting hand on my shoulder, his voice calm and steady. "Thank you for your honesty, Mrs. Johnson. We appreciate your willingness to set the record straight." We leave her house, my heart heavy with the knowledge of just how deep France's manipulation runs. As we make our way to the other neighbors' homes, the story remains the same. Each one admits to being taken in by Frances's lies, to spreading false rumors without any proof. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted, my mind reeling from the extent of Frances's deceit. But I also feel a sense of vindication, knowing that the truth is finally coming to light. When we return to my parents' house, I find Grace waiting for me, her face etched with concern. "Mom, are you okay?" she asks, wrapping her arms around me. I hug her tightly, my voice thick with emotion. "I will be, sweetie, I promise." That evening, as I tuck Grace into bed, I hear a knock at the front door. My father answers it, and I hear the sound of raised voices coming from the living room. I make my way downstairs, my heart racing as I see Frances standing there, her face twisted with anger. "How dare you turn the neighbors against me?" she spits, her eyes blazing with fury. I feel a surge of strength coursing through me, my voice steady and calm. "I didn't turn anyone against you, Frances. You did that yourself, with your lies and manipulation." She scoffs, her voice dripping with disdain. "You've always been jealous of my relationship with Doris. You've been trying to turn him against me for years." I shake my head, my voice rising with each word. "No, Frances. You're the one who's been trying to turn Doris against me. You're the one who's been poisoning our marriage with your lies and deceit." My father steps forward, his voice firm and unyielding. "I think it's time for you to leave, Frances. You've caused enough damage to this family." Frances's face falls, the reality of her actions finally sinking in. She turns to leave, her shoulders slumped in defeat. As the door closes behind her, I feel a sense of relief wash over me. I know that the road ahead will be difficult, that the wounds inflicted by Frances's betrayal will take time to heal. But I also know that I'm not alone. With the love and support of my family, I will find the strength to rebuild my life, to create a future filled with trust, respect, and happiness. And as for Frances, I know that she will face the consequences of her actions. The truth has a way of coming to light, and she will have to live with the knowledge of the pain she's caused. But for now, I focus on the present, on the love and laughter that fills my parents' home. I know that together, Grace and I will emerge from this stronger, more resilient than ever before. In the weeks following my confrontation with Frances, I throw myself into building a new life for Grace and myself. With the support of my parents, I find a full-time job at a local bookstore, relishing the opportunity to immerse myself in a world of stories and imagination. Grace continues her swimming lessons, finding solace and joy in the water. I watch her glide through the pool, Her face lit up with a smile, and I feel a sense of pride and love wash over me. One afternoon, as I'm sorting through a new shipment of books, my phone buzzes with an incoming call. I glance at the screen, my heart skipping a beat as I see Doris's name. I hesitate for a moment, unsure if I'm ready to face him, but I know that I can't avoid this conversation forever. I step outside, taking a deep breath before answering the call. "Hello, Doris." There's a pause on the other end of the line, followed by a shaky breath. "Beth, I'm so sorry. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know how much I regret what I did." I close my eyes, feeling the weight of his words settle over me. "I know, Doris, but the damage has been done. I can't just forget what happened." "I understand," he says, his voice heavy with emotion. "I just wanted to let you know that I've started seeing a therapist. I'm trying to work through my issues to understand why I let my mother's manipulation get to me." I feel a flicker of hope in my chest, but I push it down, knowing that I can't let myself get caught up in false promises. "That's good, Doris. I'm glad you're getting help." We talk for a few more minutes, our conversation stilted and awkward. When we hang up, I feel a sense of sadness wash over me, knowing that the man I once loved is now a stranger to me. As the days turn into weeks, I find myself settling into a new routine. Grace and I spend our evenings curled up on the couch, reading books and watching movies. On weekends, we explore the city, discovering new parks and museums. I hear whispers around town about Frances, about how she's become a pariah in the community. People cross the street to avoid her, their faces etched with disgust and anger. Part of me feels a sense of satisfaction, knowing that she's finally facing the consequences of her actions. But another part of me feels a twinge of pity, knowing that she's now living a life of isolation and loneliness. One evening, as I'm tucking Grace into bed, she looks up at me with wide, curious eyes. "Mom, do you think Grandma Frances is sorry for what she did?" I pause, considering my words carefully. "I don't know, sweetie. Sometimes people do bad things because they're hurting inside, and they don't know how to deal with their pain." Grace nods, her brow furrowed in thought. "I hope she learns to be a better person." I smile, feeling a surge of love and pride for my wise, compassionate daughter. "Me too, Grace. Me too." As I lay in bed that night, I find myself reflecting on the journey that brought me to this moment. The pain and betrayal, the fear and uncertainty, the strength and resilience that I never knew I possessed. I know that the road ahead will be difficult, that there will be challenges and obstacles to overcome. But I also know that I'm not alone, that I have the love and support of my family to guide me through. And as I drift off to sleep, I feel a sense of peace wash over me, knowing that no matter what the future holds, I have the strength and courage to face it head-on. Because I am Beth Thompson, a survivor, a fighter, a woman who refuses to be defined by the actions of others. And I know that with the love of my daughter and the support of my family, I can overcome anything that life throws my way. I pushed open the front door, my bones aching after a grueling night shift at the ER. The house was quiet, too quiet for 7 a.m. Usually Leon would be bustling around the kitchen, brewing coffee and packing Tyler's lunch for school. "Leon?" I called out, kicking off my shoes. "Tyler?" No answer. My heart quickened as I rounded the corner into the living room. There, on our faded floral couch, sat Leon. A large suitcase rested at his feet. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why are you home at this hour and with luggage?" Leon's eyes met mine, and I saw a mixture of guilt and determination that made my stomach churn. "We need to talk, Irma," he said, his voice steady. "It's about us. And Edith, I'm leaving." The room spun. I gripped the doorframe to steady myself. "Edith? Your secretary? What do you mean you're leaving?" Leon stood, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "I've been having an affair with Edith for months now, and she's pregnant." The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled to the armchair across from him, collapsing into it. "Pregnant?" I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "How far along?" 7 months, Leon replied, not meeting my eyes. 7 months. The realization dawned on me slowly, then all at once. "The conference in Chicago," I said, my voice hollow. "You told me you were going alone." Leon nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I'm sorry, Irma. Bliss, I never meant for this to happen, but I can't ignore my feelings anymore. I want a divorce." "A divorce?" The word echoed in the suddenly too small room. What about Tyler? What about our family? Tyler's almost grown, Leon said, as if that made it all okay. He'll understand eventually. Anger flared within me, hot and fierce. Understand that his father is abandoning his family for a woman half his age? That you're throwing away 17 years of marriage? Leon flinched, but stood his ground. I know this is a shock, Irma, but Edith and I, we have a connection. She understands me in a way you never have. I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Oh, I'm sure she does, and I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that she's young and doesn't have crow's feet or stretch marks. It's not like that, Leon protested weakly. Then what is it like? I demanded, rising to my feet. Explain it to me, Leon. Help me understand how you could do this to us. Before he could answer, the front door opened. Tyler's voice called out, Mom? Dad? Why are you both home? Leon and I froze, staring at each other. In that moment, I saw a flicker of doubt cross Leon's face. But then he squared his shoulders and called out, In here, son. Tyler appeared in the doorway, his backpack slung over one shoulder. His eyes darted between us, taking in the suitcase, the tension crackling in the air. What's going on? I opened my mouth, but no words came out. How could I tell our son that his father was leaving us? Leon stepped forward, his voice gentle. Tyler, there's something we need to talk about. Your mother and we're going to be separating. Tyler's face crumpled. What? Why? I found my voice then, fierce and protective. Your father has decided he'd rather start a new family with his secretary. Irma, Leon warned, but I ignored him. Tyler's eyes widened in disbelief. Dad, is that true? Leon sighed heavily. It's complicated, son, but yes, I'm leaving. I'm sorry. Tyler's face hardened, a look I'd never seen before settling over his features. So you're just going to abandon us? Just like that? Tyler, please try to understand. Leon began, but Tyler cut him off. Understand what? That you're a selfish jerk who doesn't care about anyone but himself? Tyler spat, tears welling in his eyes. He turned to me, his voice breaking. Mom? I pulled him into my arms, holding him tight as he began to sob. Over his head, I met Leon's gaze, my own eyes blazing with a mixture of pain and determination. You want to leave? I said, my voice low and dangerous. Then go. But don't think for a second that this is over. You have no idea what you've just started. The day after Leon left, I found myself sitting at my kitchen table, staring blankly at a cold cup of coffee. The house felt empty, hollow. Tyler had barely spoken a word since his father's departure, shutting himself in his room. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my daze. I opened the door to find Tessa, my best friend since college, standing there with a determined look on her face. All right, spill it, she said, marching past me into the kitchen. I got your cryptic text. What's this about Leon leaving? I sank back into my chair, the weight of everything crashing down on me. He's having an affair with his secretary, Edith. She's pregnant. Tessa's jaw dropped. There's more, I interrupted. He wants a divorce. Tessa's eyes flashed with anger. Oh, hell no, we're not letting him get away with this. Before I could respond, there was another knock at the door. I opened it to find my mother, Lorraine, standing there with a suitcase. Mom? I said, surprised. What are you doing here? I'm here to help, of course, she said, bustling past me. A mother always knows when her child needs her. I shot Tessa a panicked look. My relationship with my mother was complicated at best, and her traditional views often clashed with my more modern outlook. Irma, dear, Lorraine said, settling herself at the kitchen table, you need to fight for your marriage. This Edith woman cannot take what's yours. I felt a flare of irritation. Mom, I don't know if fighting is the right answer, but I won't let him walk away so easily. Tessa nodded approvingly. That's right. We need a plan. A plan? Lorraine looked scandalized. The only plan you need is to win your husband back. Have you let yourself go, Irma? Maybe if you put in a little more effort. Mom, I snapped. This isn't about me letting myself go. Leon made a choice to betray our family. Tessa leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. What if we dig into this Edith character? I bet she's not as innocent as she seems. I hesitated, torn between my desire for answers and my fear of what I might find. I don't know. Nonsense. Lorraine interjected. A good wife doesn't snoop. She trusts her husband. A good husband doesn't cheat, Tessa shot back. As they argued, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Leon. We need to talk about the house. I'm coming over tomorrow. My heart raced. He's coming here tomorrow, I said, interrupting their bickering, to talk about the house. Lorraine perked up. Perfect. This is your chance to win him back. Tessa rolled her eyes. Or your chance to show him what he's losing. I stood up, suddenly feeling suffocated. I need some air, I muttered, heading for the back porch. Outside, I took deep breaths, trying to clear my head. The sound of the door opening made me turn. It was Tyler. Mom, he said, his voice small. Are you okay? I forced a smile. I'm fine, honey. Just thinking. He came to stand beside me, looking out at the yard. I heard Grandma and Tessa arguing. What are you going to do? I sighed, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. I don't know yet, but whatever happens, we'll get through it together. Okay? Tyler nodded, leaning into me. I hate him for doing this to us, he whispered. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. I realized then that this wasn't just about me and Leon anymore. It was about our family, about Tyler. I know, sweetie, I said, hugging him tighter. I'm angry, too, but we can't let that anger consume us. As we stood there, I felt a resolve building within me. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing for certain. I wouldn't let Leon or Edith destroy what I'd spent years building. I turned back to the house, where I could still hear Tessa and my mother arguing. It was time to take control of this situation. Time to show Leon exactly what he was walking away from. And if that meant uncovering some uncomfortable truths about Edith along the way, well, so be it. The morning Leon was due to arrive, I woke early, my stomach in knots. Tessa had stayed over, camping out on the couch to offer moral support. As I made coffee, she joined me in the kitchen, her hair a mess but her eyes alert. Ready for battle? She asked, accepting a steaming mug. I nodded grimly. As I'll ever be. The doorbell rang at precisely 10 a.m. Leon always was punctual, even in the midst of destroying our family. I opened the door, steeling myself. Irma, he said, his voice softer than I expected. Can I come in? I stepped aside wordlessly, leading him to the kitchen where Tessa sat, arms crossed. Leon's eyebrows rose slightly at her presence, but he said nothing. Let's get this over with, I said, sitting down. You wanted to talk about the house? Leon cleared his throat. Yes, I think it would be best if you and Tyler stayed here. I'll find an apartment. How generous of you, Tessa muttered. I shot her a warning look before turning back to Leon. And the mortgage? The bills? I'll continue to pay my share, of course, he said. I want to make this as easy as possible for everyone. Something in me snapped. Easy? I laughed bitterly. How could you do this to our family, Leon? He flinched, guilt flashing across his face. I'm sorry, Irma. Edith's the one I want now. I can't change how I feel. And what about how Tyler feels? I demanded. Have you even thought about what this is doing to him? Leon's face crumpled. Of course I have. I love Tyler. You have a funny way of showing it, Tessa interjected. Before Leon could respond, my phone buzzed. I glanced at it, frowning at the unfamiliar number. Hello? Is this Irma Lawson? A woman's voice asked. Yes. Who's this? My name is Sandra. I used to work with Edith. There's something you need to know. My heart raced. Go on. Edith has a history of, using men for personal gain. She's done this before at our old company. Got involved with the CEO, claimed she was pregnant. It was a whole mess. I gripped the phone tighter, aware of Leon and Tessa's curious stares. Thank you for telling me, Sandra. Can we meet? After arranging to meet Sandra later that day, I hung up, my mind reeling. What was that about? Leon asked. I looked at him, seeing him clearly for the first time in days. He looked tired, conflicted. Part of me wanted to tell him everything, to shake him and make him see how he'd been manipulated. But another part, a stronger part, wanted answers first. Nothing important, I lied smoothly. Now about the house. We hammered out the details, Leon agreeing to more than I expected. As he prepared to leave, he hesitated at the door. Irma, I am sorry. For everything. I met his gaze steadily. Sorry isn't enough, Leon, not this time. After he left, Tessa turned to me expectantly. Spill, what was that phone call really about? I told her everything Sandra had said, watching her eyes widen. Holy crap, she breathed. So Edith's a professional homewrecker? Seems like it, I said grimly. And I'm going to find out everything I can about her. Tessa grinned, a fierce light in her eyes. Count me in. Operation Takedown Edith is a go. As we began to plan, I felt a mix of emotions swirling within me. Anger at Leon's betrayal, determination to protect my family, and a growing desire for justice. Or was it revenge? One thing was certain. Edith had no idea who she was messing with. And by the time I was done, she'd regret ever laying eyes on Leon Lawson. The cafe was bustling when I arrived to meet Sandra. Tessa had insisted on coming along, her presence a comforting anchor in the storm of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. Sandra was easy to spot, a petite woman with graying hair and kind eyes. As we sat down, she leaned in, her voice low. "I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, Irma, but I couldn't stand by and watch Edith destroy another family." I took a deep breath. "Tell me everything." For the next hour, Sandra painted a picture of Edith that made my blood run cold. Multiple affairs, each ending with claims of pregnancy and demands for money. A trail of broken marriages and shattered lives left in her wake. "She's ruthless," Sandra finished, "and she always gets what she wants." I felt sick. "Does she ever actually have the babies?" Sandra shook her head. "Never. There's always a convenient miscarriage right after she gets a big payout." Tessa's hand found mine under the table, squeezing tight. "We need to tell Leon," she said, but I hesitated. Would he even believe me? Or would Edith's hold on him be too strong? As if summoned by my thoughts, my phone buzzed with a text from Leon. "Need to talk. Can you meet me at the house in an hour?" I showed Tessa the message, my heart racing. "This is it," I said. "I have to confront him with what we know." We thanked Sandra and left, my mind whirling with plans. At home, I gathered the evidence we'd collected. Bank statements showing large transfers from Leon's account to Edith's, photos of her with other married men, Sandra's sworn statement. Tessa helped me organize everything into a folder. "Are you sure you want to do this alone?" she asked, worry etched on her face. I nodded. "I have to. This is between me and Leon." As I waited for Leon to arrive, I paced the living room, rehearsing what I'd say. But when he walked in, all my carefully prepared words evaporated. He looked haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. "Irma," he said, his voice cracking, "I've made a terrible mistake." For a moment, hope flared in my chest. But then he continued, "Edith wants me to sell the house. She says we need the money for the baby, for our new life together." Rage surged through me. "And you're actually considering it?" Leon wouldn't meet my eyes. "I don't know what else to do. She says if I don't, she'll leave, take the baby and disappear." I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "Oh, Leon, you poor deluded fool." His head snapped up, confusion and anger warring on his face. "What's that supposed to mean?" I grabbed the folder, thrusting it at him. "It means you've been played. Edith is a con artist, Leon. This is what she does. Seduces married men, fakes pregnancies, bleeds them dry." Leon's face paled as he flipped through the documents. This can't be true." "It is," I said, my voice steady. "And deep down I think you know it. You just didn't want to see it." He sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. "What have I done?" he whispered. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to say we could work it out. But a stronger part, the part that had been forged in the fire of his betrayal, held firm. "You've destroyed our family," I said, "and now you have a choice to make. You can continue down this path with Edith, sell our home, and lose everything. Or you can wake up and fight back." Leon looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "What should I do?" I shook my head. "I can't make that decision for you, Leon, but I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to expose Edith for who she really is, with or without your help." As I turned to leave, Leon called out, "Irma, wait, I want to help. Tell me what to do." I paused at the door, my hand on the knob. This was it, the moment that would define everything that came after. I took a deep breath and turned back to face my husband, ready to plan our next move. The charity gala was in full swing when I arrived, my heart pounding beneath the sleek black dress I'd chosen for the occasion. Leon stood by my side, his face a mask of nervous determination. We'd agreed that confronting Edith here, in public, was our best chance of exposing her true nature. "Are you sure about this?" Leon whispered as we made our way through the crowd. I nodded, my jaw set. "It's time to end this, once and for all." We spotted Edith across the room, her pregnancy on full display in a form-fitting gown. She was chatting animatedly with a group of Leon's colleagues, her hand resting possessively on her swollen belly. As we approached, I saw the moment Edith noticed us. Her eyes widened, then narrowed, a calculating look crossing her face. "Leon, darling," she called out, her voice syrupy sweet. "I didn't expect to see you here, and—" "Irma, What a surprise. I forced a smile. Hello, Edith. We need to talk. Edith's smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered. Of course, dear. Why don't we step outside for a moment? As we moved to a quieter corner of the ballroom, I could feel the tension radiating off Leon. This was it, the moment of truth. What's this about? Edith asked, her hand protectively cradling her belly. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. It's about your lies, Edith, all of them. Her face hardened. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I think you do, I said, pulling out the folder of evidence. We know about your past, Edith. The other men, the fake pregnancies, the cons. Edith's eyes darted between me and Leon, her composure cracking. Leon, don't listen to her. She's just a bitter wife who can't the truth. But Leon stood firm. Is it true, Edith? Have you been lying to me this whole time? Edith's demeanor changed in an instant. Gone was the sweet, vulnerable facade. In its place was a cold, calculating woman. So what if I have? She spat. You were so easy to manipulate, Leon. A few tears, a fake pregnancy test, and you were putty in my hands. I watched as the color drained from Leon's face. The baby, he whispered. Edith laughed, a harsh, mocking sound. Oh, there's a baby all right, but who knows if it's yours? You're not the only man I've been seeing, Leon. The admission hit us both like a physical blow. I'd suspected, of course, but hearing it confirmed was something else entirely. You've lied about everything, I said, my voice shaking with anger. All you care about is yourself. Edith turned to me, her eyes blazing. And what about you, Irma? You think you're so much better? Look at you, scheming and plotting. You're no different from me. Her words struck a chord, making me question everything I'd done. Was I really any better than Edith? Had my desire for revenge turned me into someone I didn't recognize? Before I could respond, Leon stepped forward. That's enough, Edith. It's over. Whatever game you were playing, you've lost. Edith's face contorted with rage. You think this is over? I'll ruin you, Leon. I'll take everything you have. As she stormed off, leaving us standing there in shocked silence, I realized we'd won. But at what cost? The truth was out, but that the damage had been done. Leon turned to me, his eyes filled with remorse and confusion. Irma, I don't know what to say. I've been such a fool. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in weeks. The man I'd loved for 17 years, the father of my child, stood before me, broken and humbled. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to say we could work it out, but another part, the part that had endured the pain and betrayal, held back. What happens now? Leon asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I took a deep breath, knowing my next words would shape our future. The easy path would be forgiveness, trying to rebuild what we'd lost. But as I stood there, I realized I had a choice to make, not just for myself, but for Tyler, for our family. Now, I said, my voice steady, we figure out how to move forward. But Leon, I need you to understand something. Things can never go back to the way they were. As I watched the realization dawn on Leon's face, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The confrontation with Edith had exposed more than just her lies. It had laid bare the cracks in our own relationship, the trust that had been irreparably broken. Whatever came next, I knew one thing for certain. Nothing would ever be the same again. The days following the confrontation with Edith were a blur of legal meetings and tense conversations. Leon had moved back home, sleeping in the guest room while we tried to navigate our new reality. But the fragile peace we'd established was about to shatter. I was in the kitchen, mechanically stirring a pot of soup, when I heard the front door slam. Tyler stormed in, his face a mask of fury. He's still talking to her, he spat, throwing his backpack on the floor. I saw them together at the coffee shop near school. My hand froze on the spoon. What? Are you sure? Tyler nodded, his eyes brimming with tears. They were arguing. I heard him say he couldn't just abandon her, that he had responsibilities. The room spun. I gripped the counter to steady myself, bile rising in my throat. After everything we'd been through, after all the lies we'd uncovered, Leon was still torn. As if summoned by our conversation, Leon walked in, his face pale and drawn. He stopped short when he saw us, the guilt written plainly across his features. You saw her, I said, my voice flat. It wasn't a question. Leon sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's complicated, Irma. The baby might not even be yours, I exploded, the weeks of pent-up anger and hurt finally boiling over. How can you still be considering this? Tyler stepped between us, his young face set in lines of determination that made him look far older than his 15 years. "You're choosing her over us?" he demanded. "Over your own family?" Leon flinched as if he'd been struck. "Tyler, no, that's not." "Then what is it, Dad?" Tyler's voice cracked. "Because from where I'm standing, that's exactly what it looks like." I watched as the reality of the situation finally seemed to dawn on Leon. He looked from Tyler to me, his eyes wide with dawning horror. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "Tyler, I didn't realize how much this was hurting you." But Tyler wasn't done. Years of bottled-up pain and resentment came pouring out. "You've barely been here for months. You missed my basketball finals, my science fair, and for what? For her?" Each word seemed to hit Leon like a physical blow. He stumbled back, collapsing onto a kitchen chair. "I've made such a mess of everything," he murmured. I wanted to comfort him, to say we could work it out, but the anger that had been simmering for weeks finally boiled over. "You don't get to play the victim here, Leon. You made your choices. Now you have to live with the consequences." Just then, Leon's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his face paling further. "It's Edith," he said. "She says if I don't come over right now, she'll get rid of the baby." The kitchen fell silent. I could see the war raging behind Leon's eyes, the pull of obligation against the love for his family. "Go," I said, my voice cold. "If that's what you really want, then go. But understand this, if you walk out that door, don't bother coming back." Tyler's head snapped up, his eyes wide. "Mom," I held up a hand, silencing him. This was between me and Leon now. Leon stood slowly, his movements heavy. He looked at Tyler, then at me, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, "for everything." And then he was gone, the sound of the front door closing echoing through the suddenly too quiet house. Tyler turned to me, his face a mix of anger and desperation. How could he just leave like that, after everything? I pulled him into a fierce hug, feeling his body shake with sobs. "I don't know, sweetheart. I don't know." As I held my son, I felt something inside me harden. Leon had made his choice. Now it was time for me to make mine. Whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. I would do whatever it took to protect Tyler and rebuild our lives, with or without Leon. The sound of a car engine starting outside made Tyler stiffen in my arms. We both knew it was Leon driving away from us, towards Edith, towards the life he thought he wanted. "What do we do now?" Tyler asked, his voice muffled against my shoulder. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the battle ahead. "Now," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "We fight, for ourselves, for our family, and we don't look back." As the sound of Leon's car faded into the distance, I felt a strange mix of grief and determination wash over me. This was far from over, but for the first time in weeks, I felt ready to face whatever came next, on my own terms. The silence in the house was deafening. Tyler had retreated to his room, and I found myself pacing the living room, my mind racing. It had been hours since Leon left, and the uncertainty was eating away at me. Suddenly my phone buzzed. It was a text from Leon. "Meet me at Edith's apartment. Now." My heart raced as I called out to Tyler. "I have to go out. Stay here and lock the doors." "Mom, what's going on?" he asked, his voice laced with worry. I forced a smile. "I'm not sure, but I'll be back soon, I promise." The drive to Edith's apartment was a blur. When I arrived, I found Leon sitting on the steps, his head in his hands. He looked up as I approached, his face a mask of anguish. "Irma," he said, his voice breaking. "I've made a terrible mistake." Before I could respond, the door behind him flew open. Edith stood there, her eye, her pregnant belly protruding beneath a tight shirt. "So, the wife finally shows up?" she sneered. "Come to beg for your husband back?" I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. "I'm here because Leon asked me to come, nothing more." Edith laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. "Well, isn't that sweet? Too bad he's not going anywhere." "Are you Leon?" Leon stood, slowly, positioning himself between us. "That's enough, Edith. I'm done with your lies." Edith's face contorted with rage. "Lies? You want to talk about lies? How about the fact that this baby might not even be yours?" The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Leon stumbled back as if he'd been struck. "What are you talking about?" Edith's smile was cruel. "Oh, Leon, did you really think you were the only one? You were just a means to an end, a comfortable life, financial security. That's all I wanted from you." I watched as the last vestiges of Leon's delusion crumbled. He turned to me, his eyes pleading. Irma, I don't know what to say. But Edith wasn't finished. She advanced on us, her voice rising hysterically. You think this changes anything? I'll ruin you both. I'll take everything you have. In that moment, something inside me snapped. All the pain, the anger, the betrayal of the past months came rushing to the surface. I stepped forward, my voice low and dangerous. No, Edith, you won't. Because if you try, I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who and what you are. Every lie, every con, every man you've manipulated. It all ends here. Edith's face paled, but her eyes blazed with defiance. You're bluffing. You have nothing on me. I pulled out my phone, showing her the screen. Are you sure about that? I have statements from your previous victims, bank records, even a confession from your own mother. It's over, Edith. For a moment I thought she might lunge at me. But then, like a puppet with its strings cut, she crumpled to the ground, sobbing. Leon moved towards her, but I caught his arm. Don't, I said firmly. She needs help, but not from you. Not anymore. As if on cue, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. I had called them before arriving, a precaution that now seemed prescient. Leon turned to me, his face a mix of gratitude and shame. Irma, I'm so sorry for everything. Can we try to fix this? I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. The man I had loved, the father of my child, stood before me, broken and humbled. Part of me wanted to comfort him, to say we could work it out, but another part, the part that had endured the pain and betrayal, held firm. I don't know, Leon, I said honestly. Right now, I need to focus on Tyler, on healing our family. Whatever happens between us, that's going to take time. As the police cars pulled up and officers approached, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The storm that had been raging for months was finally breaking. What came next, I didn't know, but for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to face it. On my own terms. I turned to Leon, my voice steady. Let's go home. Tyler's waiting. As we walked away from Edith's apartment, leaving the chaos behind, I realized that this wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. A chance to rebuild, to redefine what family meant to us. And whatever the future held, I knew one thing for certain. We would face it together. Stronger for having weathered this storm. The weeks following the confrontation with Edith were a whirlwind of legal meetings, therapy sessions, and long, difficult conversations. Leon had moved back into the house, sleeping in the guest room, while we tried to navigate our new reality. But the fragile peace we'd established was about to face its ultimate test. I was in the kitchen, absently stirring a pot of coffee, when Leon walked in. His face was drawn, his eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. Irma, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Can we talk? I nodded, bracing myself for whatever was coming. Leon took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us, about everything that's happened. I know I've made terrible mistakes, but I want to make things right. Please, give us another chance. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time in months. The man I had loved for 17 years, the father of my child, stood before me, broken and humbled. Part of me wanted to say yes to try and rebuild what we'd lost, but another part, the part that had endured the pain and betrayal, held firm. Leon, I said, my voice steady despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. I appreciate that you want to make amends, but too much has happened. This isn't just about you and me anymore. It's about Tyler, about our family. Leon's face crumpled. I know I've hurt Tyler. I want to make it up to him, to both of you. Just then, Tyler walked into the kitchen. He stopped short when he saw us, his eyes darting between his father and me. What's going on? He asked, his voice wary. I took a deep breath. Your father and I were just talking about our future, about what's best for all of us. Tyler's jaw set in a determined line. And what did you decide? I looked at Leon, then back at our son. I think it's time we all had an honest conversation about that. For the next hour we talked, really talked, in a way we hadn't in years. Tyler spoke about his anger, his feelings of abandonment. Leon listened, tears streaming down his face as he realized the full impact of his actions. And I found myself speaking truths I'd been holding back for too long. I love you both, I said, my voice thick with emotion. But love isn't always enough. We need trust, respect, and a shared vision for our future. And right now, I'm not sure we have that. Leon nodded, his face a mask of pain and understanding. I know I've broken your trust, both of you, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back if you'll let me." Tyler looked at his father, then at me. "What does this mean for us, for our family?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "It means we're going to move forward, but in a different way. Your father and we're going to separate, officially." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Tyler's eyes widened, but I saw a flicker of relief there, too. "But," I continued, reaching out to take Tyler's hand, "we're still a family, just a different kind of family. One where both your father and I can be the best versions of ourselves for you." Leon nodded, his voice choked with emotion. "Your mother's right. We both love you more than anything, Tyler. That will never change." As the reality of our decision settled over us, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, it felt right. We spent the rest of the day together, not as a married couple and their son, but as three individuals finding a new way to be a family. We laughed, we cried, and we began the process of healing. That night, as I lay in bed, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here. The pain, the betrayal, the fight to reclaim my sense of self. I realized that while I hadn't emerged unscathed, I had emerged stronger. I thought about the women who had supported me through this ordeal. Tessa, with her unwavering friendship, my mother with her tough love, even Edith's mother Brenda, whose revelations had helped me see the truth. And I thought about Tyler, our beautiful, resilient son who had shown a strength beyond his years. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it. Not as Leon's wife, not as a victim of betrayal, but as Irma, mother, nurse, survivor. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new joys, and new opportunities for growth. And I would meet them head-on, with the knowledge that I was capable of weathering any storm. The journey wasn't over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see where it would lead.